wherever we want to go. I mean,
Okay.
I've been in the community a couple of years.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. I'm going back to recording. Doesn't take very long. You have a lot of sound pressure when you talk.
Is that good or bad?
No,
That's
it
very
just
good.
is. I mean, there's some people who you think would be really loud, and they're like this because they have no air movement. You have a lot of air movement, Chris.
Well, and I was saying, who knows what the difference would be between a show voice or a talking voice, like here. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's what I'm trying to do is keep my talking voice and not my show voice because I don't need a microphone.
Right. And we can manage all that in editing, so it's okay if it's okay if it spikes and stuff. So that's totally fine. You don't have to be.
And you'll be amazed when you see the summary of whatever we come up with.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
We use AI to do the summary for us.
Oh, well, I can do that now. Falcon's an idiot. Don't listen to anything he says. That's sweet.
And it comes up with stuff, and we're just amazed
It's
because
actually pretty good.
right.
It's pretty good. Yeah. You're like, you don't want to oversell it.
Yes.
but it's
like,
actually pretty inspiring.
That was only mentioned like a little bit in there, but it was a real important thing, and it just pulls it right out.
Yeah, it picks up the highlights that would most likely be listened to or want to be.
So other than just chatter along, what are we doing today?
Well, today
We
we're.
have a new pope.
Did they already say who?
Yeah,
They
it's
did
an
say-
American. It's actually an American.
is he really?
Robert Provost.
Really?
He was born in Chicago. I think he became a Peruvian citizen. I think he moved down to Peru and became a citizen down there. I bribriefly read it before I walked in
Okay,
here.
this happens.
But
yes.
he is American born.
Okay.
Or I should say U.S. born.
Well, yeah.
I don't want to stir anybody by saying, oh, it's all America.
Oh, no, go with the American. We want to stir everybody up.
So, but yeah.
That seems
very
pretty
interesting.
quick. They estimated, I think the average pope takes like 6 or 7 days to get checked. So,
Right. It's only been, 2?
yeah, that's
Wow.
pretty quick.
They started Wednesday.
Pretty quick.
So,
Yeah, that was a quick choice.
so all the Catholics are going to think it's a conspiracy.
Well, it has,
And
and
if
it just totally blows that whole movie Conclave out the window.
Of course.
I watched that whole thing to prepare myself for the conflicts.
Yeah, and I'm looking for the bomb, I
Right.
mean, the
Yeah.
fireworks.
Is our new pope actually intersex? Because that's exactly what happened in the conclave. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I ruined that for everybody.
Hey,
And we all know about the Illuminati.
Right. My concern,
go ahead.
to throw a little maybe possible negative into this,
I don't see any positives, just so you know.
all the issues that went on in the diocese in Chicago of burying all the sexual assaults and all, was he part of that?
Ooh.
I mean, was he never ordained in Chicago? Was he ordained somewhere else?
Okay, just so you know, that
I
was
just
Chris
read a
saying,
tweet.
yeah, hate her.
I was born and raised Catholic.
I was raised Catholic. My parents are mixed religions, Jewish and Catholic. So.
I've been to one Catholic service, and I was just really surprised on how premeditated it all is. You just read the whole thing. And so
It's
if you've
very
been to
structured.
something that's like Holy Spirit based, you move with the spirit that comes through you. It's very different. So I was like, wait, we all just read this to each other?
That's
and then
pretty much it.
we do
Stand, kneel, sit.
Yeah, we do
Stand,
some
kneel, sit.
cardio that most people can't do, and then we leave. Like, whoa, why are we here? They know what's going on. Like, we don't even have to be here for this. This is interesting.
That's because they don't really trust you to come up with anything, because then they won't know what it is.
Ooh, well,
And the
there you
sermons
go.
are very basic. I mean, they just
And
grab something from the Bible and kind of talk about it a little bit.
I'm not overly religious, but I'm Christian. I don't know why, to be really blunt. But I always thought Christian meant that you followed the teaching of Jesus.
Exactly.
And I keep asking people when we're talking about transgender people, because I am, well, so when did Jesus say, hate thy neighbor?
He never did.
Nope.
Oh, really? Because
never
that
did.
seems to be what they do.
Well, long ago, it was several years ago, and I know y'all have heard this story. I worked at a chemical plant, and I walked into the break room, and I was told I was going to go to hell. And I just kind of stopped, and there was 3 guys in there, all with their Bibles.
Oh, you walked into a work Bible study.
Exactly.
That could happen in Houston. Yeah.
So, anyways, I asked them, what gives them the right to tell me that I was going to hell?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they touched the Bible and says, this right here does.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I think that's between me and my God.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
see,
not yours.
but see, I'm really big on those things because when that comes up, I'm like, could you show me?
Well, this is exactly what I did. This is exactly what I did. 2 of the guys walked out, and the 3rd guy was sitting there. And I said, can you show me in the Bible, where it says that I'm going to hell?
Yeah, like, could you take your fellow person through the walk of God like you were told to do?
No, I just leave it with show me.
With this book that comes chapter, verse cited, you should be able to find exactly that line that you're talking about and show someone the God's way, right?
But this is the thing. They all like to quote the same line in the Bible, but they don't say the whole line.
Right.
They leave it out.
Which one?
Which is, man should not lay with man.
Oh, okay. That is one.
The actual line is, man should not lay with mankind as he does his wife.
Mm-hmm.
That right there told me I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't sleep around. Don't sleep around. If you're committed to somebody. Regardless,
Thanks,
you're going
Chris.
to hell.
What gives you the right?
But that was just my interpretation. And I felt at peace with that because back then, everybody was called mankind.
And you know where I
Male or
find the
female?
peace with it, as far as my lifestyle, because I do sleep around, maybe. But to be quite serious though,
Sure.
what I've always said about the Bible is this: the first gospel, according to Mark, was not written until 1,000 years after Jesus died.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at, I want any of you 3 to tell me a story from your family from 1,000 years ago.
Right.
Oh, I can make one up.
I know, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So the Bible is a bunch of stories, and we've all played that game where we whisper and you get a line of people and you whisper in the ear,
Telephone
and
game.
you see how it comes out at the end, and it's nothing like what you've heard at the beginning. So that's my interpretation of the Bible. It's
But
a
it's
good book to
Go ahead.
take some information from and help with your life, but don't take it verbatim, because these are according to John, according to Mark, according to Paul. These are stories from those people who are writing those books, those gospels. It is not supposed to be taken verbatim.
Well, but see, it's even better than that, because there was this time not that long ago, long time ago right now, but where there were a bunch more books, and
Right.
The Catholic Church went through and decided which ones they liked and which ones they didn't like to make up the Bible. And
Wait a
I'm
minute,
like,
they
you
were
get to pick and
editing
choose?
and banning books in the Bible?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, they weren't just doing it
There
to
are-
the people.
There
yeah.
are gospels that
Okay.
are taken out.
Yes.
Okay.
Ruth and
There were 3 or 4.
Pius.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, actually,
Okay.
I think there's like 14.
Okay, could be, because some of them were pretty risque.
Yeah, they took out Mary's because they didn't want anything to do with women in the Bible. So they
That
took
is
out
clear.
theirs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Of course, the other thing that I really find interesting is I love the people that say this is the Word of God and, you can't play with it. But in 1936, they changed it.
Right.
You didn't have homosexuality or anything close to homosexuality in the Bible until 1936. That was the King James Version.
The King James Version.
Yeah,
So,
it's not the
that's why I
Catholic
keep
version.
telling people, it's like the Bible has been rewritten so many times. And
Well,
things have been omitted and added. Because here's the other thing. When you are talking about what they were reading from like the Dead Sea Scrolls, from my understanding, they were all written in Aramaic, and nobody knows how to speak Aramaic.
Right.
Exactly.
And they had to interpret that into Italian or English or whatever they wanted to
usually it was
interpret
Greek.
Greek. So,
And then they went to the next one.
and who's to say their interpretations are correct?
But not only that, if you were interpreting, they would give you page 7, 25, 65.
There you go.
You never had the whole thing.
Seen,
Right.
You were never
The whole
able to
thing.
read
Right.
the original.
You were
the whole
doing,
thing.
you know, essentially the word-to-word interpreting, which is worthless, as everybody knows. Mm-hmm. But, of course, I still like the bit that, you know, Luther did the King James Version. Mm-hmm. And that was because he was basically in prison for heresy, and they were going to either kill him or he could translate the Bible to English. Yeah. And so later, he actually published some things pointing out the fact that he did it as tongue-in-cheek as he possibly could and not get killed.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and I'm like, and this is what people worship. Okay, whatever.
Oh, yeah. I just had this whole thing against organized religion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, so do I.
As you should. There's a lot of violence and harm that happens, and even in some of the nicest presenting, we only believe from when Jesus died forward, we're all about the love, 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 love. You still need to look at where they throw in the exceptions. You still need to look at who they actually have as leadership or funders. And you, especially in the state of Texas and nationally, can look up a report on places who still do conversion therapy.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to land into a pile of triggers, but we do need to still presence that because conversion therapy still happens. And that is something that younger people are still being pulled into churches and therapies, and they don't know about it. They don't know what they're going through. Their parents may not know about it. They may be blindly faith worshiping of love and then getting Christian therapy, which is not licensed therapy, in the back. And that can be incredibly harmful.
Well, and also you got to look at some of those therapies. You know, what's the difference from them than any other cult?
Mm-hmm. Nothing.
You know, now I'm not saying religion. I'm talking about the therapy, the conversion therapy people. Mm-hmm. So, you know, unfortunately, I just don't have the type of brain that I could be, you know, I'd be like the Will and Grace version of the conspiracy theory episode. Yeah, that would be me. So it's like, you know, but I just could not, you know, I couldn't be assimilated in the military. Police Academy had a hard time getting me to, you know, I finally realized that to get through some of my careers, I don't. I'm too analytical. My brain is just, you know, it works from a different angle than everybody else. Where you three are going to come, you know how people say you think outside the box? That's me, because you guys are opening the box from the top. I'm digging a hole on the side.
Right.
And the funny part is that I'm usually saying the same thing as everybody else, but they're like taking offense to me. I said the same thing, but it's just a different way. So,
of course, one of the things go ahead.
Pardon?
Go.
So for the whole conspiracy conversion theory, you know, and organized religion, I do consider organized religion as a form of brainwashing. People, you know, we all know that a child born gets filled all their information. You know, from the time they are 0 to 5 years old, the parents are creating their personalities. And it's hard for children to grow up into their teens and start thinking outside that box. But luckily I was one of them.
Me too.
The military had a hard time. You know, finally I'm like, okay, I'll go through the motions. And same thing with Police Academy. And it's after Police Academy, you know, this is 40 years ago, and I'm a state trooper and stuff. And I'm like, you know, they were doing racial profiling back then before that was a term.
Yes. The term came around because they were doing it. Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest issue that we're facing right now is, you know, it is not so much the religious side. It is just humans and nature. So we could kind of take the religion out of everything in our conversation.
Sure.
It's just the ignorance of people. You know, I don't necessarily push a gay agenda, a transgender agenda, a black agenda, a immigration agenda. I'm just the type of person who always says, let people do what they want. Be who you are.
Well, see, but that's my trans agenda that you just say.
You know, but I think that a lot of the problems with the agendas nowadays is, especially for the trans community, because, you know, you only figure that 1.5% of Americans are trans or non-binary. That's you can fit almost all those people in the city of Houston. Yeah, and that's hard.
And there needs to be a word added to that, or out as.
Yes.
Right. Right. And I think something that you're dancing around that I hear is the structures that you were put into, the military, the cops, religion, they're not real into like people having their own self-expression.
Right.
They're not real.
They want you to conform.
They're
and
not
that's
real
what I'm
into
saying.
that.
It's all brainwashing. Military's brainwashing you, police academy's
Just echoing
brainwashing
that,
you.
yeah.
That's why we have trouble with the police nowadays. Because they're being told to do one thing and this is how you're supposed to do it, but that's not the reality of what they're seeing out in the public spaces.
And that thing they're told to do isn't called think.
Right.
Well,
But
and
I'm going to pause
go
this
ahead.
right now because somebody didn't do their part of introducing everyone.
Somebody didn't do their part.
I don't know who it was that didn't
Okay.
do their part.
All right.
But
Well,
this is 22 Sides, and I'm Alexis, and I'm here with Robin and...
Oh, you want me to do myself?
yeah. Do yourself.
I don't care.
I am Falcon Fur Kenyon.
And...
I'm Chris Sushi Volk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome. We're happy to have you on 22 Sides. And, some of us don't like being told what to do.
And now that we've just
just
stirred the
kidding.
crap
Just
for the
kidding.
last 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it'll all wash out well. And,
Well, see, that's the pre-show that gets everybody excited.
Oh.
They're like, oh, this is what this is going to be like. Now we talk about baking and, nothing.
Oh, I can do that. That's me. I love to cook.
So do I.
But kind of going back to the 1.5 and
Sure.
the struggles that, and then you do the whole 10% for the LGBT or the LGB side. That's hard numbers to get across to people as far as acceptance. And I think a lot of people are so busy trying to push, you don't understand me rather than you don't accept me.
Right.
I think the bigger issue, because it goes back to intelligence. I don't understand you. Well, just because you don't understand me doesn't mean that you can accept me.
Well, I think it also, I think you're right. It goes back to intelligence. And I've always looked at it from, if ignorance is present, some of us get violent.
Right.
And so if humans, don't understand something, some of them, not all of them, can get violent. And so between the stimulus of what is this I'm looking at, what is this I'm dealing with, and someone processing that, in that gap, that's where we have opportunity. It could be education. It could be running. It could be getting help. It could be de-stressing the situation. But a lot of us at this table have grown up with seeing the consequences of the violence part, being told don't be a certain way, or hate can happen, violence can happen, you don't want to be on your own, that sort of thing. And then we've lived long enough where we can have tools that educate, and I have seen people be open to that. I have seen people say, I actually do believe in this thing called love and caring and expression, and I just want to know more. I just want to know how. I just want to be respectful, because there are plenty of people who do want to employ, partner, support their fellow human being. They just don't always get the microphone. They just don't always have access to tools.
And, one of the things I think that we miss is that our communities tend to get angry very quickly.
All communities.
Yeah, no,
I think
ours are way above that because we feel like our rights are being impinged upon, and they are. And it's hard to actually fix something if you're angry. And it's hard to make people listen to you if you're angry. And I know one of the things I constantly tell people is if you're mad, don't go talk to politicians that you're mad at.
Right.
Wait till you're calm and have a calm conversation with them, because if you're mad, they're going to get mad and they're going to scream and holler and they're going to act like they're mad even if they aren't. And that's just sort of the way it works. So just back away and talk, be calm about it. And, if you think that they're, basically not giving you your rights, just say, I don't think you're giving me my rights. I think I have the same rights you do, and you're trying to get rid of them.
Right.
And don't scream and call them names and that whole bit.
Well, and that goes back to the whole Martin Luther King format of don't get angry, just, quiet protest and show your numbers. But here's the thing that I've always pointed out to people, though. Let's look at Martin Luther King in 1964 and 65 and the Civil Rights Movement. That happened in 1965, the year I was born. That law was passed 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do black people still have their rights? Are they still being treated as equals? They still, to this day, have to fight for respect.
But it's a lot better than it was.
But the hate is still going to be there.
And
The hate is
will always
definitely
go
still
to
there,
be
yeah.
And it
That's
is.
true.
And I mean,
That,
go ahead.
that goes, I mean, even the gay community.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Because back in the 70s when I came out, you know, we fought long and hard to have all these rights, and now they're all being taken away.
And for those listening, how old are you, Chris?
I'm 63.
And how old are you, Falcon?
You just made that up. I saw your face.
I'll be 64 in August. And the same, was 64 or 63?
Her face was totally, how much can I shave off here?
It is so great that this isn't videoed.
So
She's like, I'm rocking 25.
I had 60, carry the 2.
I'm here with all the kids, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alexis, you're how old now?
34?
Okay, come on. How old are you?
76.
Okay, Chris, how old are you? How old are you?
63.
Okay, no worries. Falcon, how old are you?
I'm 60.
Okay, great. And I'm 42. And so this is actually different ways that we came into it, right? Has everyone always been in Houston?
Yeah, Chris and I had come into it basically the same way as far as what we experienced in the 70s and 80s. And, you know,
How long have you two been friends? You've been friends for as long as
years.
I've known you. Okay.
20 years.
Wow.
20 years.
Yeah. Okay. And I've known you since around
Well, you know, give or
2008.
take.
There were those other years where we
The
didn't
question
talk.
is this continuous friendship or on and off?
You know,
You know, we were really close for a long time, but of course, she had to get a relationship. And love you, Monica. No,
There is a stereotype of U-hauling that we could address.
right. No. I mean, I think, you know, it's with every relationship and every type of friendship. You know, you're still friends. You still care about each other. You still love each other, and you're still there for each other when you need each other.
Exactly.
But there's a point where, you know, things change.
Sure.
In your lives, you know, we were part of the same organization. We both pulled back quite a bit.
We're actually
from it.
we're mending them. There's been a wound we don't know about. No, just kidding.
No.
Just kidding.
No, I can honestly say
Just kidding.
we have never had
okay,
a wound.
Okay,
No,
good.
no,
Yeah,
we've
that's
never
good.
fought.
Okay.
We've never fought.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we get each other into trouble. We almost get arrested in hotels in Utah.
There you go.
Not that hard to do.
Everyone needs a bailout buddy, but a buddy to get them in trouble. I don't know. Like they can't be the same guy.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's
Yeah.
like if there's going to be a jail thing, we're going to be in it together. So it's like, what do you mean you're separating us? We're both non-binary. We got to be in the same cell.
There you go. Make it work for you. Well, Chris, you were saying that you came out in the 70s. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And then you've been fighting for your rights, but you've also seen it now being taken away. Is that what
Exactly.
you're saying? Okay.
You know,
just to get it back to that.
And,
What
you
have
know,
you
we
had
were
taken
talking
away?
about protests and all earlier in the gay community. And I know we've talked about this before, but in the very first gay pride parade
In Houston.
in Houston
Okay.
could have been a riot.
Right. Yep.
And HPD showed up in full riot gear.
Mm-hmm.
But that was when I was the most proud to be gay because we wore black armbands and that was it. HPD even cleared every vehicle within a 2-block distance from Westheimer, thinking we were going to riot.
Okay.
And it was a quiet demonstration that felt so powerful.
What
It
were
can
the
bring tears to my eyes today.
What were the black armbands?
The night before the gay pride parade, there was someone who was murdered by HPD because they were sitting next to each other in a bar, and the cop said that he hit on them, so he shot them.
Okay.
And that was the night before Gay Pride Parade.
Wow.
So, yeah, they probably were expecting a lot.
They were expecting a full riot. And I've done marches in Houston, marches in Austin, and so on and so forth, but every time we've been in a march, it's been organized, it's been peaceful.
That's what it has to be.
I mean, have we had our little outbreaks from some of our other groups that participate?
Sure,
You know?
sure.
But it just, the way we respond to situations is not out of hate, it's out of love. And I think if our relatives would actually listen to the torment that we go through when we're coming through that realization that there's something different about me than the girl next door.
Yeah.
And I think maybe, possibly, is it possible
Possibly, yeah.
that people could give a shit?
It's interesting. Like, that is a moment that I've been focusing on in conversations is I hope that by sharing myself, people would care. And there's a lot of different campaigns that have been built on that, the visibility campaigns and things like this. Like, well, if we just humanize each other, if we just say our common interests, then people will care. If we say our trauma, people will care. You know, surely if they just knew what we go through, they would care. And then a lot of times they don't, unfortunately, or a lot of times they say, well, no one cared about me. You know, and there's some turmoil right there. But I wanted to ask, just for those who hadn't been at the Pride Parade, what were the black armbands for that you were?
For the
Because he was murdered the night
Okay,
before.
so it was a
quiet demonstration.
Quiet demonstration. Like, yeah, okay. And then were you at the first Pride Parade, Falcon?
Oh, no, I'm way too young.
No.
You were in Houston then.
You went to
No,
Houston?
I moved
Okay.
to Houston 21 years ago.
Okay.
22
And
years ago.
Alexis wasn't. She moved here later.
Yeah, I
you
moved here
haven't
in
been here
70.
that long. Well, one of the first Pride parades that I went to, I got to Montrose as fast as I could when I was 18 years old, and I was actually around Pride and had a great experience and everything was fine. But when I was actually going to be walking in Pride, my mother had a huge fear that, oh, no, don't do that, you know, because that's where hate can happen and protesters can see you and you would basically be a walking target, which was in her mind. And I actually called Chris Volk because I knew that she had been in a few Pride parades and whatnot, and we were friends at the time. And I said, oh, gosh, like, I never considered this. Like, has it ever gotten violent? And you told me that story. You were like, no, we had every reason for it to get violent. And that was not what we wanted to bring to the table, which is so important to share about history in general and then Houston history, because it was not just a few years ago that a campaign of, oh, it started with a riot and Stonewall history started getting overly marketed. And I felt like that had, you know, a different form of protest, a different leaning towards violence. And it's like, well, they didn't want that either, actually. They went to the bar that night. They were taken over that night. And the brawl happened when they were taken to the streets. Like, that's a lot of like holding yourself back.
And that was not a demonstration.
Right.
Pardon?
And it was,
Stonewall was not a demonstration.
No, it wasn't.
I mean,
No, it was self-perseverance.
Yeah.
yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
it was them saying, you know, respect me. And, you know, the fact that it lasted as long as it did, those numbers of days. And actually, we have a good friend who was actually a bartender during the riot.
And he's still at Stonewall.
He's still at Stonewall. He's still working there. He's I think he's in his, don't hit me, Fred. I think he's in his pushing 90 or almost.
I think I saw an article on him recently. Yeah.
Sweetest guy in the world.
So great. Yeah.
But yeah, he tells us all the stories of it, and that's somebody you really need to get on your podcast.
That'd be great. That'd be wonderful.
But he tells us all the stories, and
Okay.
you know,
I was going
he
to say,
can phone it in.
Yeah.
That's true.
Zoom it in. Yeah.
that would be fun because I was at Stonewall before the riots.
Yeah. As it turned
I mean,
out, she was.
I didn't live in New York, so I went through there, and it was a scary little, really hole-in-the-wall, horrible bar.
Now, wait a minute. Are people at holes in the walls? Like, come on.
Say, you were there because it was fun. Those dive bars are always the fun.
Don't act like we haven't been down a dark alley and had some fun.
Well, the other thing was that I wasn't of drinking age.
Right.
But since it was a mob bar, they didn't care.
So, Chris is like, oh, well, yeah.
Do you think I was 18 when I went to my first gay bar?
Yeah.
And back then, drinking age was 18.
Yeah.
That was like 16 when I walked into Club Lemoore.
I was
In Houston,
15.
or where is this? Okay. You were 15 in your first gay bar?
Yeah, the Parsonage in Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody posted something on Facebook about what was the first gay bar you ever went into, and I was watching, and, people are posting things, and finally I said Stonewall, and yes, that one. and nobody posted anything else.
Mine was Club Rainbow because that was the place you could get into when you were 18, and then Chance's, the lesbian bar, was 21 and up, and they were like pretty strict at that point because they kept having cocaine problems.
Darn those 18-year-olds.
I know.
Yeah, it's
They keep
18-year-olds.
bringing in the good drugs.
I know. Well, I mean, if you had just gone down the street to Numbers, you probably would have been let in,
Oh, that's
You
true.
would.
Yeah.
You would, probably. I've heard those stories. I wasn't here back then, but
Yeah, exactly.
Nor was I, so I've also heard those stories.
yeah.
Thinking back, my actual first bar, I was like 15, was Mary's.
Okay. Yeah. That Mary's. A lot of people have such fond and funny and,
Especially back
dramatic memories and tender memories of Mary's. It just depends on when you got there and what was going on.
Yeah, and the nice thing was that if bad shit was happening and you could scream for the people at Mary's, it got taken care of.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times it was people from Chances that were suddenly in trouble because someone drives up and they're going to beat the shit out of all of them.
Oh, I remember that. And how Mary's used to,
Yes.
it
And until
was like the
Mary...
Big Brothers. to
Yeah,
all
Yeah,
the girls.
exactly. And you're like, holy shit, are those big people.
Oh, yeah.
It gives me goosebumps, So when I met both of you, you were performing with what's called the Royal Court, and that is a global organization. Euryses, is that the full name of it, or is that the Houston name of it?
The Empire of the Royal Sovereign Imperial Court of the Single Star Incorporated.
And when did you get involved with that? Was it because you kept going to the bars, or how did you find out about
She
both
was
of those
involved
things?
first, so you tell your story.
Well, I mean, I've always wanted to get involved in something like this, and I
Okay.
really wished I found out about Oasis in the early 80s, because it got started in 82.
Okay.
84.
84, excuse me. And, but I got involved in 2005?
What reign was it?
21?
Oh, Garrett's?
Right at the beginning of his reign.
Yeah, that'd be 2005.
Yeah, in March of Garrett's reign.
So
and it
you
was
were right before me then. Okay.
And what it was a group of people caring about somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Wow, there you go.
And they're entertainers, a lot of egos.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. You
Let's
gotta
talk
think
about us. Let's talk about the others.
and the thing is the way it is set up, which got started in 65 in San Francisco.
Okay.
The international court system got started.
Yeah.
And initially what they were doing was just feeding the homeless queers. And then AIDS hit. And they were like, okay, we got to really step up.
What was interesting about the international court system, it started out because of a riot.
Wow.
Because of a raid.
I didn't know this.
Not a riot, but a raid. Back in the day, the Widow Norton, as we affectionately called her, I'm sorry. I'm blanking out.
That's okay. That's okay.
Hold on a minute.
We don't need to fact check everything. That's okay.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
No. We should know his name.
Jose Serra.
Yeah,
Look,
Jose.
people can look up the history if they want
And
to.
Jose Serra was a major figure back then. She was performing at a bar called, or a dive called The Black Cat. And she used to do all torch songs in drag. It got raided, and they were throwing it in the back of the paddy wagon. This is back in 1964, 65.
Okay.
And they threw in the back of the paddy wagon, and they said, "Get in the back, you old queen." She goes, "I am not a queen, I'm an empress." Started from there.
Boom.
People just followed her. She created the court there.
Okay.
San Francisco was the first court, the mother court as we call it.
Some of the best things are created out of delusion.
And then it just...
Hangover.
What's amazing, though, is that it spread. It started there. Then the other communities around there all started creating courts throughout California, spread its way east.
Yes.
So you want to talk about a disease? No. But with Canada, we have a court in Mexico.
Glitter is contagious.
Right. But it's amazing. It's an amazing group of people, welcoming people who, you know, if you don't have a home, if you feel ostracized, if you feel like you don't fit in, join the court because they will make you feel so welcomed. And, you know, I'm not saying every court's perfect, and I'm not saying ours is perfect because, you know, you get over 5 gays in a room, there's going to be arguments about dinner. Well, so
I mean, back to that, you know, there's a lot of ego, but what are they doing? Like, for people who don't know,
what the court does,
they came about to, because a lot of people might think of, you know, they've seen Pose, and they have people who house people, and then they have people who compete.
Oh, we're not that pretty.
Yeah. You know, they have people in competitions.
Neither were they at the time.
No,
you know.
the court system came about more as, you know, before they became a 501c3, it was more of a social thing where they were just going out in the community, doing shows, raising money for others. It's kind of like, you know, pageant babies, you know, people would get their starts there and be groomed on how to be a good pageant person. And then they could move on to the pageants and stuff. But really what the court system was before they became a 501c3, before AIDS, was more just a social group. And they were just trying to do a little bit of political stuff. Things had to change a little bit because once we became 501c3s, we couldn't do the politics. So you have to be very careful what you say and do to maintain your 501c3 status. Okay. So we could talk about politics, but it has to be nonpartisan.
Right. Okay.
So, but anyways, then when AIDS hit, you know, it's pretty much almost every court became a 501c3 because we wanted to make sure that when you donate money, you get that tax break and you're doing something good for people. And it was the drag queens that came out and raised a ton of money for AIDS research because the government was not going to help us. Right. And on the flip side of that, it was the lesbians that took care of those AIDS patients because when their families were throwing them out, it was the lesbians that stepped up and took care of them. That's why for my reign, I made sure I raised money for a lesbian organization. And
that's when I met you, was you were highlighting funds being raised for, I think, the Lesbian Health Initiative.
No, actually mine was a Sisters.
A Sisters. Okay, I get them
confused.
My
husband did LHI the following year.
Okay, I get them confused, but they both support lesbians.
Yes. Yeah. And it was a big thing for me because, you know, I saw what they were doing. You know, one of my best friends died. Sure. You know, we couldn't take him in. You know, it's like... I couldn't take them in because I was living with my family at the time. Sure. But I saw these lesbians stepping up because the AIDS crisis wasn't nearly, I'm not saying it doesn't affect them because it did affect a few, but did not nearly affect them, of course, as it did the men. Sure. They stepped up, and that's part of history that people really need to know. Well, and a lot of our communities stopped sharing that. So, I mean, if we're holding accountability, it could be because the gay men died. But some of the gay men do put their noses up to the ladies. You know, I mean, they forget that they were the ones that were there taking care of them. I'm telling you, when I was going to the bars back in the 80s, there was the lesbian side and there was the gay men side. Right. And there's some good reason for that. Yeah.
It's okay to not mix all things.
It's like the gay men are over here having their drinks when they're going to get emotional and start a fight. Watch.
As if you can.
Oh my God, that is so true, though. That is so true. I used to run one of Houston's largest lesbian bars, and oh my God, you could just tell by watching the women. Oh shit. It started, and when it was two femme women, we just backed up.
Yes.
We just
Because
backed
they
up.
are the worst fighters.
Oh yeah, because they grab hair, they scratch,
They have nails.
they bite. Well, we would just stand back and make sure they didn't hurt themselves.
Sure,
hurt
that's fair.
You
That's
know,
fair.
themselves
Just
in
let
the
them
wall.
work it out.
At least when drag queen fights somebody, they take their nails off because they don't want to be charged with homicide.
Yeah. They're like, I'm gonna need these for the next number.
Right.
But
Well, what lesbian bar did you run, Chris, in Houston?
it was a bar here in Houston called Twins,
Okay, Twins.
and it was located at Stanford and Westheimer.
Okay.
The front of it was the Midnight Sun,
Okay.
which was a really big a lot of the young kids went there to find daddies.
Okay.
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 Um,
Okay.
Where's this place
and-
at? I need
not anymore. It's closed.
Okay.
Okay. And that was the
Yes.
front porch of the house.
And what's a daddy for people who don't know? Because I know you're getting emotional over there. Yeah.
It was,
Falcon.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it changed.
A daddy is a mindset for some and a physical appearance for others. I'm in the physical appearance, but I'm also in the mindset. It depends on how you want to look at it. You can look at just the socialized version of daddy, which is just younger guys looking for older guys, or sugar daddies, looking to be supported.
Okay.
Which is what I'm taking where Chris is going with it.
Sure.
But then you got the whole other aspect side of daddy, sir, and master.
Okay.
So that's a different subject altogether.
Sure.
Chris is talking about sugar daddies.
Right. Okay.
And
Sugar daddies.
Just
Okay.
young guys going in trying to find somebody to.
But you were saying it was a lesbian bar.
The front part,
front.
the front porch
Uh-huh.
was a men's bar.
Oh, how inclusive.
The
See,
rest-
even back then we got along. No, I'm just kidding.
The rest of the house was a lesbian bar.
Well, hey.
Until you try to find parking.
But we've always had parking wars, haven't we? At least ever since I came to
Especially in
Houston.
Montrose.
Yeah, the
Did you
Montrose
ever get
area.
to go there? Did you ever get to go there? To Twins? Is that what it's called?
Twins, it was we were very,
Female only.
yeah,
Okay.
back then.
Okay,
And now you had to be escorted
Okay. Okay. You had to know somebody.
because, we wanted to keep the women safe. And there was a lot of stuff going on back then.
Sure.
We had our main thing, and this came up earlier, on the bars getting busted.
Right. Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And folks, if you're younger than back in the day, they would literally turn the house lights on, line everybody up against the wall, which was illegal at the time, and check every single person's ID.
Then
Okay.
missed it.
What were enlisted?
In
Where-
some cities, they would actually post your name and address
Right.
Like in the paper.
in the papers.
Okay. Well, is this associated with what was called the lavender scare? Or no?
I don't
No.
know.
Where people were worried about people being publicly outed from their jobs and
Oh yes, definitely.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's the whole purpose of doing that is to scare you from going to those
Public.
bars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they lined you up.
They try
They
to shut
took your
down the
IDs.
bars by scaring people away from them.
Okay.
But in
They
the
took
late
your IDs.
70s and early 80s, it would start on the far end of Westheimer.
Uh-huh.
And when that first bar got busted, they would call the next bar.
Right.
Hey, they're on their way.
Hey, they're on their way.
And they would come.
There was a lot of
all
bars
the
in
ride
Houston.
down
Yeah.
Westheimer. But all the bars talked to each other.
All the dominoes,
So we
yeah,
could get
okay.
the underage kids out. And
Okay.
if anybody's stupid in there carrying, they can get out.
This
Before
is before Instagram, by the way, for all you
yeah.
young people.
That's-
And before cell phones, I mean, this was...
the gay telephone tree. Like,
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh no, and that's funny because it's like I don't think anybody knows what a phone tree is anymore, do they?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know.
I don't think they do.
That's the equivalent of a group text. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Back when we got 3 lines. But yeah, it was a whole different mindset.
So they would take your ID, and then what would happen?
They would take you to jail if you were underage.
Okay.
Or if they could come up with anything else.
Anything else, right? And
Okay.
what law was it? I mean, what year was that law changed that women had to wear 3 items of clothing, women's clothing, and the men had to have on 3 items of men's clothing?
I don't know, but I know that was a time.
I know that was a period.
We have all the lawsuit stuff in our archive because
Yeah.
Phyllis is the one that finally got the last one of them done.
You know,
Man, now it's so not work nowadays.
Right, yeah.
I will go to jail. I do not have 1 item of women's clothing on.
Yeah.
You don't?
There was a bar.
Oh gosh, I have no items of men clothing on. So between us,
We're going to jail.
or not.
I'm not.
That's not mine. That's theirs.
On Dallas, West
Wait, am I the
Dallas.
only one wearing a bra here?
On West Dallas, there was a bar called Rockies.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember
This is
that
the
one.
early 80s that I remember going
Yeah.
there. And you would knock on the door.
Okay.
And they would open a little door.
Okay.
Oh, speakeasy.
Exactly. It was
yeah.
ran just like a speakeasy.
Uh-huh.
And they had they had the light,
Mm-hmm.
the whole 9 yards, and explained that when the cops, they would open the door, see it was cops, set that light,
Yeah.
everybody would
Back.
switch tables, pull the tables off the dance, or put the tables on the dance floor because they weren't supposed to be dancing,
Oh, okay.
and set boy
Yeah.
girl at all the tables.
Uh-huh.
And that was so
Wow.
cool to hear about that type of stuff from somebody who was there.
Mm-hmm.
And Rocky was there.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and now they market that to hipsters. So, like, if you can find a speakeasy, it's more of a marketed phenomenon, not a we fucking lived through that. That's not that's not a fun night.
It's actually not as much fun and excitement as when the police show up for real.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I was right there going, I've got that uniform. Doesn't fit anymore. But
Well, it was interesting one time, I know that Chris, you left home driving without your wallet and you got picked up from the cops and you were there for driving without an ID.
right.
And one of the neatest things about having a bar community is the minute she got discharged, she just walked to the nearest bar and they were able to take her home. They were able to know her. They were able to help her, I mean, so when people are like, well, what am I going to do now? It's like, well, if you have friends at the nearest bar, like, just go, and that's a little bit of community spirit that people don't get out in the suburbs, that they may not know about from just being online, that they have never ventured in and actually taken the time to grow those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, shortly after I came to Houston, they were doing the bar raids down the street one after one after one. And it was really funny because I'm trying to remember the name of the bar, but we were on their phone tree, and I say we, it's me and several other people, because we would get the call saying, okay, start collecting bail money. And so we'd start pulling out bail money. So that if somebody was...
GoFundMe.
Yeah, pretty much, but it was a different kind. But and because every now and then it'd be like, okay, there were like 20 people arrested and only 18 of them were out. What's going on with the other 2? And you could find lawyers who'd go find out, and it's like, oh, they need bail because they decided they weren't going to just let them out. And it's like, okay, so we'll put up the bail.
And that was, we were constantly being harassed by HPD.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even down to
Now they join the parade.
But see, to me, that's one of those wins.
It is those
It's
wins.
a win. I mean, that took a lot of years.
And a lot of people do now ask, like in some cities, the cops do not go to the parades, and they're not included, and they're it's very separate because there's fights. But in Houston, the cops do walk in the parade. They are some of them are LGBT. And
some.
They're definitely keeping.
I've got a uniform.
They're definitely working with Pride to keep the whole parade safe. I think mainly because it's such a huge event.
It is.
I mean, I don't. There have been some times where threats have been made and whatnot, but Houston particularly now has, and I don't know when this was incorporated, but they have a little. Not a child pen, but an adult pen for the protesters, a little protesting section that protesters can stay in. And so they stay in and they protest there the whole time. They bring their little signs and little microphones, and we have a spot for them too. And the funny thing is that the gay people protest back, so there's actually like a
Oh, no, they pose with them.
I
think that's the best thing is when you go on
And
the
their
Facebook
chain
the
link
next day.
fences. There was one year, and I don't remember when it was. We were still in Montrose with the parade, and we're going down, and they stop us because they're like, "We've got some protesters down here," and we're like, "Whatever," And so one of the assistant chiefs had shown up, and he had lots of HPD people there, and there's like 20 protesters, and they're throwing stuff, and they have signs, and they're trying to hit people in the parade. And so he's like, "Okay, I'm going to ask y'all to leave, and here's the thing." And they've got horses lined up in front of them. He said, "Right now, I can escort you back to your cars safely. When I'm done with this speech, we either go back to your cars or we all leave." Because he said, if you look around, there's about 25 of us. There's 300,000 of them. I'm not going to get into that fight with you. So good luck. And the guy who was just pumping everybody on. We're sitting there on the float waiting to be allowed to go. He said, "No, we're staying, etc." I said, "You should look behind you. All of his supporters are gone."
One of the first years I walked with the Transgender Foundation of America, the Houston Transgender Unity Committee, was with Alexis, and there were some walkers, and then there was a truck that you could get on, and that's really helpful when you don't want to walk everything. And there were, of all things, I don't know, some sort of group takeover from Christians. I don't know what to call them. They broke through the barriers. They jumped on our trailer, some of them, and then some of them were reaching in through the driver to get the sound system, and they put their Christian iPod on our sound system. And the funniest thing was, we're like, no, that's a horrible playlist. No.
We kept the iPod by the way.
Typical gay fashion, everybody would have been right up there going, "Yeah, let's dance to this."
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there was a little listing, and then there's this cop standing there just looking around, and I'm like, "You're supposed to protect us. They aren't ours. Get them out of here."
And they were like, "Well, how do you know?" We're like, "Because that's not our playlist." And then some people were from our community were like, "Wait, so we can break the barrier and just walk with you guys?" And then they started walking with us, and so the Christians had all of 3 seconds of whatever they were supposed to do. I don't know what their plan was. It was really bad, but
I'll be quite honest. The year I was in the parade, where I had to be on the float, I hated it.
Some people love that part, and some people love walking better, and some people don't have a choice.
It was the year I was emperor. Did you have to do a float when you were emperor?
I did float.
Yeah. But
I didn't.
Yeah, because you have a job
No, I didn't.
Well,
to be there and wave.
yeah, my empress and I are up there, and my empress is a real woman, so not a drag queen. So only happened a few times in our court history. So, but anyways, we were both up there, regalia, crowns, and we're pretty much standing behind a truck cabin. And now the whole parade route, I'm waving, thinking, I am a target, I am a target, I am a target, I am a target.
You missed that in your job description?
Oh, it freaked me out. I've never
much.
told anybody this.
No.
I've never told anybody this,
Yeah.
but I literally was like
Wow.
freaked out the whole time.
You know,
'Cause I'm just waiting. Good, nice shiny crown. It's like, oh, you can see that at night. It sparkles. Let's go for that target.
It's like go for the target 3 inches below.
Yeah, it's a night parade, and no, thank you for saying that and sharing that. And it's interesting what thoughts and memories come up after you've been through a few years. And some people prefer to watch the parade and just celebrate on the side. Some people prefer to walk, and again, like some people don't have a mobility choice, but. Back to when my mom was worried about the protesters, I was like, so I'm not going to be at the parade. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be in the parade. And that did not comfort her because she thought I would be a target, right? And I was like, look, I mean, it's already planned. This is what's happening. And I was with the Houston Gendermen, a drag troupe that was aside the court. I think every city that's actually big and developed in their LGBTQ community should have like a court and a drag troupe, like options. And the court was always supportive to the troupe was always supportive to the court, and oftentimes we'd see each other in the airport traveling to shows. I mean, like completely unplanned but super cool. And we had a spot in the parade that ended up costing more and more money every year, and then we had less and less troop members walking with us because they were walking with the trans float, and some of them were transitioning, or some of their friends were over there.
Well,
so
there was another thing.
Can we talk about this ahead of time?
And we invited anybody.
Yes.
If you want to walk with us, we're good with it. We need all the friends we can get.
Yeah, exactly. It was just more fun, and so here I am in this rainbow wig, which is not quite what I would necessarily do on stage, but it was catchy with a top hat, and I got put on the news because it was sort of Pride showy, and not everyone dresses at Pride, but I was performing behind the trailer, the walking part of the trans float, and this camera came right up to my face, and then my phone buzzed, my sister texted, "Mom saw you on the news." And I was like, all right, well, at least she knows I'm okay. But I mean, after going to a few parades, if you've been in them, when it gets cut off, when the floats go one way and the people go the other way, when HPD never gives out their safety plan, so you never know where you're going, but hopefully you parked a car, we've been through a lot. And I will say that Pride is, for me, a lot of things, but being in the actual walking part, it can be a huge celebration of one another that I have only felt any other time. I have only felt that level of celebration on stage for performing. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate, whether it was the court or your individual performances and your shows that you've done, for all the many reasons. There's been like other groups besides the court group, and fundraising and just fun FUN raising for bringing people together, bringing people out of their homes, bringing people to connect. And it has been a really positive experience. Yeah. There's things going on stage, but there's a whole lot going on in the crowd and the audience, as far as like seeing one another, catching up with one another, like literally getting that isolation stiffness that we all kind of get on our own chipped away by being with one another again. And so when some people who have never been to bars, or maybe are sober and afraid to go to bars, they ask, well, why bars? Why? Who cares if they shut down or don't shut down? It's hard to explain unless you've been there during some of these show times or these intentional development times. It's not all the time. Sometimes a bar is a bar, but like we have experienced a lot of community in those walls that I'm very thankful for, because you two have facilitated a lot of those shows and been in a lot of those shows way more than some people even volunteer their time. Right. And you're never thanked for all those ripples that you put out, but they're definitely there on the stage, in the crowd, and back in the dressing room if there is one, you know.
You know, now that you're making me think about it, damn, we've done a lot of shows.
A lot of shows.
It's been 20 years. It's been 20 years
lot of
of
shows.
doing a lot of events and
And we're not talking quarterly shows. We're talking a few
Weekly.
shows a week.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that is
when
a
we were
lot. It's
fully
a lot.
active, it was every weekend.
A lot.
Sometimes 2 or 3 shows a weekend.
A lot. Sometimes 2
So-
a day. Like a lot.
Yes.
Oh, we've
a lot.
done 2 or 3 a day, and especially when you're raining, you're expecting to go to
Other
every
cities.
community
Right.
event in town, and
There's a lot of them.
there's a lot.
And
there-
sometimes out of town, right?
Right.
Like you travel a
Oh
lot.
yeah,
Okay.
but I
Yeah.
can remember sliding into some bars right in front of Dalton,
Yeah.
and he'd take a picture of me, wow, and I'd go to the next event.
Yeah,
You know, because
yeah.
you
That's what
couldn't
you gotta do.
spend,
Yeah.
but I had proof I was there.
While working, while living your lives, like it is a lot. And I, with the court, sometimes younger people like myself and the people that were performing in my troupe, that would be the only time that they could travel because the court absorbed some of the costs. The court was
No.
I don't want to say anything outside of the lines, but I'm saying like when you are not used to traveling, you would share hotel rooms.
Oh,
you would
yes.
you would
But
share,
the court didn't pay for it.
No, okay, I'm not trying to say
Okay.
anything that would get anybody in trouble or anything, but I'm just saying when you're young, you don't have hotel money. When
Right.
you have never been on a flight, when you share points,
And
when
we're
when
pretty
you
good
take
about
care of
doing
people,
that.
you guys
You know?
absolutely were. There were people in the troupe like Kuma who had never really traveled that much or performed that much, and it's not just about going to your local bar. When you have to get on a plane and go to other coordinations and things like this, like the court was pivotal to having some people have those experiences and you want to take it like outside of the court. A lot of people in Texas have never even traveled out of Texas. So I mean,
Right.
that's a phenomenal gift when you think about it like that. And for me, seeing like the international representation at the local Houston coronations and things was really wonderful to see people fly into Houston.
Right.
You two have, definitely facilitated that. In fact, Chris went to the International Drag King Extravaganza with me to see if we were going to host that before they stopped their conference because the court could support other performers
we
throwing
were talking
things
about
at a
that, weren't we?
hotel. We wrote up a business contract, and actually, full disclosure, they were really uncomfortable about the fact that men were involved.
Right.
And
It's
all
hard.
the different organizations here in Houston were like, let's do
Let's
this.
do this.
They were
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
All the different men's organizations.
It
the leather
wasn't
community.
just the court.
Yeah.
It
wasn't just the court.
It was another groups wanted
Yep.
to help you out, and
Yep.
and that's one thing that people outside of Houston
They
just
don't understand.
Yes,
realize.
and they don't
Yeah.
understand. I
is
mean,
that we are very cohesive here in Houston
Right.
as far as how we play.
and we
together.
get people in
Right.
the trans community say, "Well, you ought to talk to these people," and these people are like, "We do.
We do.
Just,
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And,
there's no talk to them. It's like."
and before we move on, there's something in my memory of your court experience, if you don't mind, and I think Falcon had something to do the most with this when the Creating Change conference came to Houston with the National Task Force. It was around the time that you were working with the movement to do the Harvey Milk stamp. What was that about? Like, what kind of process did that take? I mean, activism comes in many forms, and some people can hear about performance all day long, and that's not going to be their thing. But getting work and visibility into stamps, like that seemed kind of unique.
Okay, that comes from the international court system.
Okay.
I really had nothing as far as developing it. I just promoted it.
Okay.
All the court members try to promote it.
Okay.
Throughout the whole system. But that was from our fearless leader, Nicole the Great.
Okay.
And she develops this. Right now we have the same stamp program going on for Bayard tongue twister, okay? I can't say it.
You can't say it. That's okay. That's okay.
But
Uh-huh.
I'll get Sushi to say it in just a moment. Anyways, we have
There's a new stamp campaign. Is that what you're talking about?
we do have a new stamp campaign.
Okay.
So, but the Harvey Milk one, and it wasn't just a stamp; it was also the ship naming.
The ship, yes.
So we have a naval
Okay.
ship named after Harvey Milk.
what? A mail ship?
A naval ship.
A naval ship.
A naval
big
ship.
Yes.
Okay, so for
With guns.
Okay.
For people who have never sent snail mail, we were talking about snail mail stamps. That is
No,
what
we're talking about a military ship.
No,
right,
no.
but you got Harvey Milk on a little stamp, right?
On a stamp.
Okay.
Okay.
And then there's a ship
The person's
situation.
name I'm trying to say. Let's see if
Okay.
I can say it without because there's.
Let Sushi say
I have
it.
an accent.
Let Sushi say
So it's the second one down.
Bayer.
And what's the last name?
Is the name Rustin Bayer?
No,
Or Bayard Rustin?
Bayard Rustin.
Okay.
Bayard Rustin.
Bayard
He was an activist.
Okay.
He's the one that
Okay.
was actually. He was a gay man that actually worked on the civil rights movements with Martin Luther King Jr. He was his right hand.
Okay.
But we're trying to do his stamp campaign right now. So it's Bayard Rustin. There, I finally got it out right. There's certain words I cannot say properly.
That's okay.
But anyway, so the stamp campaign came from Nicole the Great. She does a lot of campaigns like this. And it came about years ago, but I was part of the court, international court system as far as being an heir and working on those committees on international level.
So why would
so-
someone do a stamp campaign?
Why would somebody do a stamp campaign? Visibility.
Okay.
Let's get ourselves out there.
Okay.
We need our history put out there. We have Harvey Milk. We're working on Bayard Rustin. I'm sure Jose Sarria is going to come up pretty soon.
Okay.
So you're talking about people who were on the forefront of activism and the civil rights with Bayard Rustin, and Harvey Milk being the first gay elected official, and Jose Sarria started the whole international court system, which is the second largest LGBT plus fundraising system in North America.
Okay.
So
I mean, that's important. It's a lot of
Jose
history.
and Harvey were good friends.
they were.
Okay.
Everybody knew Jose.
I mean,
If you went to that funeral, you would have realized. When I went to Jose Sarria's funeral, the widow Norton's funeral, we had to literally, they blocked off the city of San Francisco because we had to go to this cemetery way out, far away from the city. And the way they had to move the cars from all those city blocks,
Sure.
it was like a parade float.
Sure. That's fun.
How they had to merge
Yeah.
cars together and all this stuff. I'm not going, this is insane.
Yeah, it's a parade.
But it was a
Yeah.
parade, and it was a long
Wow.
parade.
Wow.
And you
I mean,
got to
what
keep
a
in mind,
presence.
most of us flew in. I had a rental car, so all of us flew in.
Sure.
And those cars were full of people.
Yeah, that's
And
wonderful.
It took us a long time to get those
Yeah.
cars out. But that's just who Jose Sarria is. And I hope people do go on to Wikipedia and look
Check it
up
out.
Jose Sarria.
Okay.
And learn everything
Okay.
about him because he was an amazing person.
Okay.
You'd be surprised at all the things that he was responsible for, and he was in politics in San Francisco, and I mean he was amazing in all the things he accomplished in his lifetime.
He was the first gay person in America to run for office. Harvey Milk was the first gay person to be elected office.
Okay. Okay. And I can't get this like ship thing out of my head. So what happened with the ship?
We did a campaign, the same thing. We did a write-in campaign to the
Okay.
Congress. The mail campaign goes to the Postmaster General. We did another one for the, I'm sure it has to do with the military, head of Navy or whatever. But we did a campaign where we wrote in the write-in campaign. That's all
Okay.
it is. It's a write-in campaign.
Wow.
And
So they put names on the sides of ships to hold
Yeah.
history. Is that what we're pointing to?
yeah, so it's like
Okay.
the
So
U.S.
another visibility thing,
right.
but also with the government, which is a big deal. And
I didn't really want to mention it because I'm sure Trump's going to turn around and say, no, we got to change that name now.
Yeah, well, I figured.
I'm pretty sure he's listening. No, just kidding. But so we want to highlight different forms of activism because it's not always take to the streets, right? It is through stamps, it is through the ships, it is through performance, and it's important for people to know because they may not really see that as activism. So you can actually look up the USN Harvey Milk ship and it pops right up. So Falcon is showing me this on Wikipedia, and that's wonderful. Like,
So what kind of a ship is it?
Girl.
She doesn't have her glasses on either, okay?
That's why I asked rather than take it. I was being handed
By the
a
way,
phone.
girl was spelled Gurl. That's the gay version.
Lots of use.
I'll take
We're
anything.
allowed to use that.
Yes.
No, it's funny. Years ago, a friend of mine has transitioned, Sebastian, and the great Crystal Rady Love and I were talking to Sebastian, and Sebastian was talking about getting his top surgery, of course. And I'm like, fantastic girl. And Crystal goes, what the hell? I said, what? He goes, and the way I said it sounded very good. I said, fantastic girl. So I have to make sure I say it right.
Yes,
And it was Crystal's like, what the hell? I said, what? You called him girl. I said, Gurl. And Sebastian goes, I knew what he was saying.
It's all in the intention.
Well, and that's amazing comment right there.
Yes.
Because that is kind of a subject I do want to go on to.
All right, well, let's go on to it.
Is intention, because we kind of talked about this.
Sure.
Last year, we created the Day of Mantras contest.
Yes, you did.
And Robin was my mentor as far as, okay, I know I'm going to fuck this up when I get up on stage, so you're going to have to be right there saying, he didn't mean it.
He had the best intentions. And I know the intention police with psychology would be like, intentions mean nothing. Actually, come on.
So I've always been this, I'm the worst person with pronouns.
Sure.
No, you aren't.
Yeah. No.
Actually, I am, because I just called Robin girl. That's why I had to correct myself.
No worries.
But I'm the worst person with pronouns. But one thing we kind of talked about was
Go ahead.
in our community, the GLBT plus, we are getting almost militant, non-binary people
Sometimes.
coming at us saying, you don't respect me, da 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 da, blah, blah, because we don't always know what their pronouns are.
Right.
And even if they
Sometimes they don't know.
thank you. But I that's always been a big issue of mine, is not so much about your pronoun. Yes, people should be respectful of your pronoun.
Sure.
I'm 60 years old. Sushi's 63. It's hard to train an old dog to do new tricks.
Sure.
We didn't have this in our faces as we grew up.
You did not.
And when I looked at the statistics, yes, I did read things. When I looked at the statistics of transgenders and non-binaries, as far as the major population, is between the ages of 13 to 29. That is going to be the majority of them.
That are out, that were studied.
Well, in a survey. A legitimate survey.
A legitimate survey, okay.
It was not done in front of McDonald's.
Yeah.
So, but
Probably would have been better.
yeah, right. And I kind of try to tell people this, when you're dealing with people who are older, have patience. Please have patience.
Yes.
Because, and I go back, to my younger days when I was a teenager, and, not to offend anybody because I don't want to offend anybody.
Sure.
But my dad still called black people colored people.
Okay.
His whole life.
Right.
That's what he was growing up with. That's what he learned. He wasn't being derogatory. He wasn't trying to be racist. That's what he learned. And the funny part is, I'm like 17, 18, and he worked I grew up in Flint, Michigan. He worked for Chevrolet in the factories. They had bring your family to work day. His coworkers who are black call themselves colored people. So I'm like, call each other colored. So I'm like going, okay, now I get it. So it's hard to break, going back to my father, because I kept on saying, Dad, that's not the term anymore. Right. And he's like, no.
Well, it goes back to ignorance.
It does.
So, and hold on.
No.
Hold on. Let me.
You've got a lot to say today.
Okay, go ahead. All right.
So,
I just threw Sushi and Alexis out of their chairs. Okay, go ahead.
Basically, I grew up in Southern Illinois. I was essentially raised by a black lady. That would be current day. And if I ever said black, she would have probably beat me because she was a colored person and she wanted it to be colored. Now, she's dead now. So do I change? I don't think so.
It's hard. Like I said, when she said, when they said, Robin, see, I do correct myself.
Go for it. Yeah.
When they said that it comes out of ignorance, it partially does because you should change generational. It's hard for us old people to do that.
Well, and
Well,
with
I'm an old
respect,
person. Sushi's
with respect, with respect, Sushi wanted to talk too. So, what would you
Do
say?
you remember that
Shut her mic
conversation 10 years ago? It had to have been longer than 10 years ago.
We have talked a lot. Which one are you remembering?
I'm talking about the meeting that the gentleman called me to.
Go for it.
Was this when you were reigning?
No, it was before I was reigning. I was single.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And
Yeah, it was
there was
before.
a large group. How many?
Probably around 2009, I would say.
Yeah, and but how many was there?
About 15 of the
Okay.
troop members.
And I asked
Houston
Robin,
genderman.
why were they asking me to come? And she's like, well, I really don't know. And I'm thinking in my head, it's about doing shows, performing, No, it wasn't. It was because I was using the improper pronouns. All right? It was still fairly new in our community.
Very, very new.
At that time.
Yes.
But it was the work that our generations did
Right.
that gave them the right to even use those pronouns.
Oh,
So
that's
don't
Sushi
jump.
again.
And so I told them
Come
to
through.
excuse me
Come
for
through.
being an old dyke.
That's true.
Come through. Come
Okay?
through. Come through.
That we worked for y'all.
Uh-huh.
So don't jump me because I'm using the wrong pronoun.
That's, but that's starting to be a hard argument to sell to people that they don't see the work that we did.
This was
Right.
yeah, especially the younger
and that
ones.
was her experience there. Is
Yeah, because I gave them some examples and all
No,
of what
she
we
gave
all had to do.
Oh,
She
the
gave
march-
a lot of
my
examples, a
march
lot of
is-
history,
Yeah, and people
personal history too.
personal history, the history of the GLBT community and the struggles we've gone through over these years, and people are forgetting. These new kids are not learning about the Matthew
Right.
Shepherds.
They're not.
And
They're just now re-seeing the world of what created the Matthew Shepard into a story.
Exactly.
So, I mean, the hate that he was experiencing that caused his murder, it was not so forward facing as it is coming right back now for a few years. I mean, when you have a president in the White House that allows for the students to change their pronouns once a semester, Obama, with the EOC, then, I mean, that's a very different world than we were presented. It doesn't make it immediately peaceful. It doesn't make it forever available, apparently. But there have been kids that have grown up to be in their expression that they want to be in, and now they're grappling with, whoa, what happens when it's taken away? What do you mean? And people are conflating that very rudely with what they call a Disney experience, right? Like but kids of a certain generation that were allowed to have hormone suppressants, were allowed to pick their pronouns and say who they were safely in their homes and still be housed and loved and praised. They were not just told, hey kid, you could be whatever you want to be, and then they have it taken away. No, they have very loving, supporting families who understand this, who research this, who get it. They're not perfect, but they have chosen as their families with their kids on how they're going to raise them, not to kill them, not push them out of the house so the community has to take care of them because these are now houseless people. There are parents that have taken the actions to make safe spaces, and then now politically and systematically a lot of it is shifting, and that's kind of scary. But the thing that I was going to say is and I do appreciate hearing both all three of you, and stepping back and pausing. That's the point for me, is that when ignorance happens, what space can we allot for? Sometimes we cannot give a lot of space if violence comes up. But if somebody says the wrong pronoun, the wrong racial label, the wrong whatever, how can we pause in that moment and get their intentions? One, it may create more safety for the both of you. Two, we might be able to have a conversation. And it's in that conversation that I think a lot of us can actually learn something. Are we going to be perfect? No. It takes practice, but the intentions are there. And it's really, really important in this time to not police people, because
Especially
in ignorance, yes, especially in our community, we need to come together, because in ignorance, if you're suppressing that, there's nothing wrong with ignorance. Like, I don't know how to fly a plane. I am ignorant to that. That's not a problem unless I'm in a plane that's going down, which could happen these days. Like, then I need to be educated, right? If I have never met somebody that had a different expression, if I was not told the appropriate labels and things to use, if I was not shown that, if I didn't put it in practice, those are called learning curves for a reason. So even because Obama and the EEOC allowed for pronouns to be changed in schools and things like this, that doesn't mean immediately all the older teachers know how to apply it or have the space to apply it per student. It was not perfect. Like, even when those things are implemented, it still takes a lot of time. Education takes a lot of time. That's why I always go back to intention. Everybody at this table can tell when somebody wants to kill us. Well, they don't need to say anything.
That's the big thing. It's the intent that matters. And the younger trans people, I'm like, if someone comes up and they misgender you, how does it sound? Does it sound like they're doing it on purpose to be mean? In which case, go for it.
Yeah,
it's all yours.
Yeah, I mean,
on the other hand, if it's just somebody who couldn't tell, I've had situations where, in a situation where I know someone is trans, I don't know which way they're transitioning. They're sort of at that point in between. And so I will very politely say, okay, so which pronouns do I use? And about half the time I get this very angry person who said, well, can't you tell? I'm like, I wouldn't have asked if I could tell. And, and they're like, well, that's up to you. And I'm like, okay. And I'll just pick one.
And wait, they actually say that's up to you?
Oh, yeah.
Then why did you ask the question, can't you tell?
Exactly. It's stupid. And usually I'll pick one and they won't like it. And I'm like, look.
That's why I love traveling with Chris, is because
you either have to tell me or else.
No, I've seen Chris. We'll be at a restaurant and I'll see a busboy come up and say, here's your water, ma'am. And the waiter will come up and say, sir, what would you like to eat? And she won't react either way.
Because I don't identify as either. And because I don't identify as either, neither one of them bother me. Now, I work in retail and I have customers that call me he, she's. After they tell me I'm prejudiced.
Right.
They call you a he, she?
After they tell me I'm being prejudiced towards them.
You probably are, because you would consider them nice people. That's being prejudiced.
Is it because you're more bush than them, or?
Yeah, it was a female.
Yeah.
So you were more bush.
Yeah. But something I got to really watch is my response to anything like that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. In that moment of ignorance, what are we assessing? That wasn't ignorance. Right. That was.
I was going to say, and they know exactly what they're doing.
Oh yeah. They were trying to hurt.
You can tell.
They were trying to hurt.
So the intention is they were trying to hurt.
But it didn't bother me.
Right.
Right. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And some people would get bothered. That's what Falcon is trying to say. They're trying to, and even in our own communities, they're bringing that agitation, they're bringing that policing, because they're either having to bring it with a lot of community all the time because people can't tell, because they're mid-transition, because they're mad about their place in the world. But when they bring it into our own community, we're not creating bridges. But people who are hateful intentionally, because what you can't see right now is, like, Chris is very masculine presenting, and that can be confusing. Well, there's probably a lot of people all day long, like what you're saying, the waiter versus the busboy, who are just trained to serve by leading with saying miss or ma'am. or, sir or Ms., like in hospitality. They don't mean anything cruel. They're just trying to do their job, bring the beverages, bring the food, all this other stuff. But people who are calling you he, she's are seeing you, as your 50-foot diker, like this is one of them on that radar ahead, and they've got their mean slur ready and probably still insisting that you help them at the store.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're put in a position where you have to keep your job, hold your tongue, not pay it any mind. And that is what younger people need to learn, is that they're not going to be always accommodated in general, but especially in a society that doesn't want to accommodate expression or, transition or anybody besides the heteronormative, like, majority.
Well, and one of the things that I've been talking about off and on for a while is, let's go back 15 years, and I'm just picking a random one. About then, I noticed that trans people, for instance, started showing up everywhere. They were on TV shows, one and then several. And then it's like every TV show or series has to have a trans person. Mm-hmm. And you would see them being interviewed on the news a whole lot more. I mean, lots of things that sort of felt positive. And I kept telling people, we need to be careful because we're going to, basically get a backlash. Mm-hmm. And because there's a lot of people that we're just basically poking and tweaking and just back off and enjoy it. And, didn't happen. And, we're getting a backlash now. Well, you have to deal with it, and you have to be careful about what you do.
Yes and no. Here's the thing that I've always told people from my experience. I've had some people ask me, why is everybody in your group so militant? And why are they so in your face? And why are we getting all these commercials? And why are we doing this? And why are we doing that? I said, and I always responded with, because you are putting us on a platform, so we're going to use that platform. If you shut up about us, we have no reason to talk about you. The best way to stop us from being so militant and in your face is to shut up about us.
And not care about us.
Right.
Don't worry about us. You stay in your lane. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've always said. I'm not necessarily here to promote trans, black, undocumented workers. I'm here about, everybody just stay in your lane.
Yeah.
And accept everybody for who they are. We talk in this community, and it's not just trans or non-binary. We talk about the gays and the lesbians and the bisexuals and the alt lifestyles that we all go into. And it's not just the gays that do this. Straight people have those alt lifestyles too.
Yes. What they do behind their closed doors with whomever they want to is also happening all the time.
Right. Oh, yeah. And the thing is like, they're consenting adults. What they do is their business. What you do to your body is your business, outside of suicide, obviously. That's illegal. But currently.
Sort of.
Well, I believe in assisted suicide if you got issues. But no, but if everybody stayed in their lane, we wouldn't have these issues. The problem is, of course, ignorance. And we're going to keep on saying that word a lot here. Well, ignorance.
It's also misuse control, because I'm really into control if there's consent.
Right.
But if there's not consent, then I'm also really into body autonomy. Well, and so there's a majority of people that are not into those two things, and they misuse those things towards other people. Mm-hmm. And that has not been addressed in the majority level of things, and it does filter down to the rest of us, unfortunately.
Yeah, what I've never understood, and I mean it that way, and I've been out since 1955. So I've seen all sorts of weird things. Mm-hmm. And, was doing...
Stay off my OnlyFans.
You need subscribers too.
and what I've never understood is people that want to tell other people how to live their lives.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is one of the reasons that I'm not terribly religious in the traditional sense.
Back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. It really is, because they want to tell me how to live my life. And I'm like, but y'all don't.
That's very true. But the hypocrisy will be there with everybody, with all groups.
And my whole thing is that if people would, if it's causing some problems for real, and I mean honest problems, okay, let's talk about it and it can probably be handled. But 99.9% of the time, it's not causing any real problems. It's just something they made up because they're annoyed.
Right. I don't want my kids to see gays because it might turn them gay. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I come from a family of 7 kids and I'm the only gay one.
And there's a lot of gay people who grew up with a bunch of straight stuff. It didn't make them less gay.
Right. We were all raised the same,
I mean,
my mother was an artist, and
that
she was like
explains
I'm glad you said it.
I tried to resist. I don't know what he's talking about. No.
She was like the president of the American Pen Women, National League of American Pen Women. Are you familiar with that organization? She was national. She was Texas. She was Houston.
Okay.
Anyways, and she was involved in a lot. She had a lot of gay friends.
And she had 2 gay kids.
But wait. She had a lot of gay friends.
Okay.
She designed a Miss New York State pageant in 1968.
Okay.
I mean, she had a lot of gay friends, but she never brought them around us in fear that they would make us gay.
And they did.
And she had
That was from not being there.
well, that was naive.
She must have been a carrier.
Because I was born in 61, and my brother, who's also gay, was born in 58. So it just kind of.
Right.
We weren't around queers, but we had 2 in our family. And, what
Born
mom
this way.
would help. Huh?
Born this way. Some of us are born this way. Some of us just get into it through adventure.
But, one thing that finally helped my parents come to terms with it was because my mom said that 2 of her most loving, caring, generous kids are gay. And that is not wrong. And God does not make mistakes.
So you're saying the other kids are horrible, huh?
Well, they are.
No, we are going to talk about families.
Yeah.
We could.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people have grown up in times where they've been told to not catch the gay. They've been told to separate but not equal. They've been told they've been quarantined. A lot of things, and that's why we're talking about these things. That's why we're breaking down the walls.
A lot of that goes back to the gay plague.
Yes.
Exactly.
We started making strides in the 70s, and then the gay plague came out.
Well,
and
the 70s here wasn't all that festive.
No, that's what I'm saying.
That was when the high
strides.
school kids were driving Westheimer and beating the shit out of queers.
Playing
Because
Smear the
that's
Queer
what they
for
did.
real.
They would go
See,
roll the
where
queers.
I grew up, it was a little bit different because they would come through the parking lots and stuff with the bars screaming faggot. And of course, when we say stop the car, they stopped. They got their asses kicked.
That was the big thing back then because a lot of the drag queens were implanting heels into people's heads.
Right.
Yeah.
That were rolling the queers. And a lot of people don't know this, and I wish there was a way that we could make sure it stayed in history.
Okay.
What stopped that was the Guardian Angels out in New York.
Okay. Tell us about
They
that.
came to Houston. The Guardian Angels is what changed all the stuff that was going on in New York City in their what's it called? The tram subway and the subway system.
Okay.
The Guardian Angels would walk with a big stick.
Oh, okay.
And they all had berets on.
Now we're getting religious. They're the angels you wish you had.
They had the berets on. They had big sticks.
Okay.
And they stopped all that in the subway. But when they heard what was going on here in Houston and that HPD was doing nothing about it, they came and showed up.
Okay.
And walked Westheimer.
Okay.
Just like that.
Kind of like the original Queer Patrol, or I heard
Actually,
of Queer
it
Patrol.
started Queer Patrol.
Okay.
They came in, they policed it, they got all the crap that was going on stopped. They built a relationship with HPD.
Okay.
Then they started Queer Patrol, and Queer Patrol, because of the Guardian Angels, were able to have that relationship with HPD.
Wow.
And that's what stopped.
Okay.
And I even had a little brother who used to do that with all his buds before he found out I was gay.
Right. Well, thank you for telling us of that history, because it takes someone representing that. It really does. And for those people who don't know it, there are people who wear T-shirts that say Queer Patrol. They walk with whistles and sticks, like you're saying. They walk people safely to their cars. They walk the streets so people don't jump people and harm people. And that is important. When you're living your best Insta life, you may not think about all that stuff when you finally go out in real world, in the wild, and have to watch your back. Recently Queer Patrol was just revamped here in Houston.
Oh, awesome.
And, I feel like we play a little bit of the telephone game in the community on, when cars are getting robbed, when people are getting jumped, when so-and-so didn't make it to the show and we're not really sure why. Is it a hate crime or is it vandalism? We're just, we're not really sure. I think we keep an open mind and we try to tell people from bar to bar still, if you're in the industry, what's going on and to look out. But sometimes it's hard to keep up. And those are not things that you can always put on Facebook. You may not know what is really happening in the neighborhoods that you go out in until you actually go out,
Mm-hmm. And, one of the things that I think helped here in Houston, too, is quite a few of the bar owners, when real trouble was starting to happen, they would just hire people and say, no, not in our area.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm. And, there was a
vote. Bar Owners Association of Texas.
Yeah. And not too long ago, probably 4 years, maybe 5, there started to be people being grabbed on the street down in Montrose, outside of JR's in that area. And the owner, Charles, basically hired a whole bunch more security and had them walk everybody to the car.
Okay.
And it stopped pretty quick when somebody tried it with his security was all over the place, because I don't think he hired nice people.
That's good. You don't need nice people.
And like I have a friend that got grabbed, and she's a small trans person, and physically they just picked her up and were getting ready to throw her in. And some people were coming up from Black Hawk and saw them and went running over. And so the people in the van dropped her and she left. But that was just, who knows what was going to happen next, but it wasn't going to be good. And I give the bar owners credit because, well, to begin with, it's for their own benefit, because if it's too dangerous, nobody's going to go out.
Right.
Well, actually, that's what stopped a lot of the bars being raided back in the 70s and 80s, is you had to hire 2 HPD.
Right.
Not just 1, 2 HPD. Every bar hired 2 HPD, and all the bar raids stopped.
Interesting. And I mean,
sounds like a payoff to me.
And maybe it is, and maybe it's a bridge, right? And I don't know all the history that goes into that, but you were obviously there, and it is good to see what these trends are. And I think currently we are one of the few places in the nation that actually has a lesbian bar still. We have leather bars, we have gay bars, we have mixed bars. And that's more than some towns even have,
And we have a whole lot of bars that don't care.
Right. And that's the thing.
Right.
That's the difference between today and back then.
Exactly.
Where,
I just don't have any trouble going any place I want to go, bar or restaurant-wise. So I don't need a gay restaurant or a gay bar.
That's true, but that's also hurting our gay bars.
It is.
Yeah, it's
Big
true.
time. Because, acceptance obviously means that you don't have to go into that bar where you were being protected by those walls. What happened in those bars stayed in those bars.
Yep.
And so that created a wall, a fortress in a way.
Exactly. But I'd rather have it open up where we can be ourselves and just be out than say, oh gosh, I've got to be very careful about only going here, here, here.
So when you're not in the intimate gay bar and on the small stage with a weird light and low budget and the seediness of it all on that type of
Stonewall
stage.
again, huh?
Yeah. And then you're actually in the big stage called life. What would you two want for the world from here in this moment? Not everything is bar centered. What would you like to see for the world and community that you've worked so hard for as things are taken back a bit. What do you think there is to do at this point?
One, continue to raise money for the organization, to the different groups that need the money, especially to go through what we're getting ready to go through.
Okay.
With the health insurance and all that other stuff that's going on. Be more loving towards each other.
Yeah.
Because we got to stick it out together. You know, what did Jose said? One.
Gosh, you throw me on the spot again.
I wish I could remember.
It's a
It
famous
was
quote.
Okay. We'll think about it.
divided.
we
No,
I'll get it.
No worries. We'll get it.
Divided
like-
we fall.
as
United we stand. United
No,
we stand.
it's-
Divided we fall.
It's a little bit close to that, but yeah.
it's got a little bit more
It's got a
verbiage to it that kind of
Empress
makes you go,
flavor.
you know.
Okay, we'll look it up.
Let's see. I think the original quote around those things.
United we stand, divided they catch us one by
Go
one.
on.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a
Hey.
good sentiment. Yeah.
You know, and we
Good
have to
reminder.
be united.
And I think
And
in the revolution, I think the statement was, "We all hang together, or we shall surely hang separately."
Well, that's true.
Okay.
You know,
Same thing.
Especially, all is one.
Wait, you mean that Empress wasn't original? Just kidding. The shade.
You know, because some people may feel that what's going on with the trans community doesn't affect you yourself because you're not trans. I'm not trans,
I'm
but
sorry.
I have been
Are you sure, sir?
kicked out of bathrooms. I have been escorted out of bathrooms. I've had 6
Women's
people
or men's?
standing at the men. I'm in the women's restroom,
You're in the women's, yeah.
but men come in to get me. I've had 4 people outside the bathroom door when I came out, and I always try to use my most feminine, excuse me, when I walk past them, so they won't grab me or, you know.
Right.
But I think until this all gets healed, it's going to be more in John Q. Public because the restrooms are such a big thing right now.
Yeah.
John Q. Public doesn't realize on how real trans people look today.
Right.
Right.
Some
Right.
of them look way better than.
I mean,
In your standards.
they look just. I mean, there's no difference. So
Right.
who's getting harassed going into the bathrooms are people like me.
They're UPS drivers.
Yeah.
Are people like me.
Exactly.
You know, people who haven't transitioned and people who are not taking supportive hormones and people who look maybe a little too close like their dad, you know, and, you know, but the problem ultimately is people don't understand that old boogeyman marketing when they were trying to keep blacks out of the bathroom is literally the same marketing. They didn't even change it. They're so lazy. They're literally the same marketing images that they used to say trans people were in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And people are not hearing like experiences like yours, and they're not remembering experiences like yours because you're not a majority experience. But you know, you were never welcome in the bathroom either, even though you qualified, you know.
Right.
And there's been a lot of harm where there's no recourse to talk about it. There's no backup to talk about it, and that is important. You know, we say we want to protect the women and the children in the bathroom, but it's only they want to protect some women and some children, if any. And they also want to hide their reputation and what they've done in the bathrooms because there are some
Don't look
trans
at me.
people. But there's like, okay, like if you want to look at facts, let's look at how many politicians have had crime sheets in men's restrooms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Republicans.
And how,
Oh yeah, a lot of
Virtually all of them.
and hey, while we're looking at it, I want to see it. Like I want to bring it into the light. Like let's look at the nitty gritty on how many trans people are out there causing this many problems. Like I want to see it.
Well,
know?
here's the thing. When you're looking at numbers, once again, when you figure that, you know, everything is going to be skewed where, yeah, you know, if pedophilia accounts for 1% of America, then you can plan that 1.5% of trans non-binaries, 1% is probably going to cause pedophilia. Same, you know what I'm saying? It's across the board. There's not I'm not saying, same thing with gays, same thing with blacks, same thing with straights. What I'm saying is, if you're looking at any demographic of numbers, and you're saying that 1% is pedophiles, that's going to be in any group. I'm not saying trans specific.
So there's gonna be problems in all different demographics groups. At some point, is what I'm hearing you saying.
But
when you throw math into it, it throws it off.
So when you talk about,
isn't it proof that most child or sexual predators are straight men?
Straight
absolutely.
Men. Yes,
and that's what I was about to say. The percentage of transgender people who have been shown to be pedophiles is so low, you can barely even find it.
But once again, you're talking about a small percentage of people.
No, I'm talking about the percentage of the trans community. It's way lower than the straight male.
But
and I think there's a lot of reasons for that, because they get their frustrations out other ways, and they're going to be nervous. I mean,
but when you talk about the bathroom bills, and I just, once again, my analytical brain is going crazy with this, because I'm why are we arguing about real estate? Why can't you just create a massive bathroom with cubicles, floor to ceiling cubicles, totally enclosed, everybody goes in, everybody goes out? Because if somebody's going to get attacked in a bathroom, male, female, child, whatever it is, it's going to happen. Well, it doesn't matter if there's a person with a criminal mind outside that door, it's going to happen. So the real estate doesn't really mean a damn thing to my mind.
When the whole hero argument was going, we did a lot of research, and in the state of Texas, there's no recorded time that a child has been attacked in a bathroom by anyone,
right?
Let alone trans people. And, it just hasn't happened. And one of the big questions was, because they were talking about children of 5 and 6 years old, it's like, our view was, what the heck are they doing in a bathroom alone anyway? I mean, a public restroom is not where you want to send a little kid.
Right.
But back in our day, we did.
We did.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I went to the bathroom that young.
But it goes back to what Chris was saying, even further. So if we start just, not the real estate, because that does throw it off, but that is why there's a lot of money involved, because it's called public accommodations. And people also, in public accommodations is restrooms are included, but that's not the whole thing about public accommodations. But what Chris is saying is where I think we need to look at the foundation of things. So if there is harm, period, that is done in the bathroom, is there support, recourse, and accountability for that? Yes. In the city of Houston, if somebody goes in and causes a disturbance, there are repercussions for that.
Houston has had a bathroom law since before 1963. And it's fine, to be really blunt.
Where women are supposed to go to the women's and men's supposed to...
It says, women should use women, men should use men's, and it's only an offense if you entered the bathroom of the opposite person to cause a disturbance.
Okay.
To cause a disturbance. So if you and I go to a bathroom and we have a pic of one long ass women's line versus one short no line in men's. And we dash into the men's restroom to use your restroom. That's not a problem. If we went in there to cause a problem, that is a problem.
If you bang on doors going down through there and do something. What
Chris is saying, and this is a lived experience, and Falcon, if this is your experience, or Alexis, if this is your experience, but this is what Chris is saying is she is going into the women's restroom. Her ID says woman, and it is the people in the restroom that is causing the disturbance to her, such that she is having to be pulled out and prosecuted from the bathroom. By going to the right bathroom.
And see, with TFA, one of the things we decided to do was become more active on things. And this was right before we got shut down for the pandemic. But one of the things that did come out is there was a person here in Houston that went to the public library. A trans person.
Oh, okay.
Went into the women's restroom, and the librarian had security remove her.
Was that Kate?
No.
Okay.
And she was from Oklahoma. This person was. They just in town as a guest. And so then HPD came and arrested her. charged her with a law that does not exist. It literally does not exist anywhere in Texas. And I mean, they had a number and everything else. Well, we sort of got that thrown out, and, basically we had to convince her to come back to Texas so they could expunge everything, because they couldn't expunge it without her physically there in court. And so what ended up happening after all of this is the HPD officer was sent to be retrained.
Well, that's a good thing.
The librarian was fired. It was right at the end of Anissa's term.
Oh.
Our gay mayor's term in Houston,
who went in and told
Texas,
the mayor that she was an abomination.
And this was right when they were trying to put in a lot of anti-bathroom bills,
Right.
and a lot of the towns and cities that still didn't have a safety ordinance.
Right, but
And there were people trying to make sure that Houston, the most diverse city in the world, continued to not have a safety ordinance.
well, but what also happened is the security guard that went in and literally pulled this person out was arrested.
He should have been.
And,
For going into the women's
and I
restroom.
mean, I will grant you, we were pushing it very heavily.
Oh, yeah.
And using as much political clout as we could get, but it went through the courts. Everything happened the way it should have. So I'm like, okay, the law is a good law. Mm-hmm. And does it say, yeah, you should use the one that's labeled? Sure. So use it. If you don't want to, just don't cause a disturbance. And I mean, if you go in and go do your thing and wash your hands, that's not a disturbance in anybody's mind.
Right.
And there are families that are gender blended or heteronormative or single parents that do have kids that have to bend or use the same laws. So if you are just a single mom who has a little boy and you have to keep your little boy with you, that little boy is going to go into the women's restroom most of the time. Mm-hmm. If you are a single father who has a little girl, it gets a little harder for him to be taking the little girl into the men's restroom.
I've seen it happen.
It happens, but if we're just talking about like real plumbing, there are less toilets and more urinals. And so the dad often has to get a woman to have the little girl assisted into the women's restroom. So you're now trusting a stranger.
And
These family restrooms have helped a lot.
I've also seen the dads take them in.
Yeah. No, totally. But it's not just a trans issue or a androgynous issue. Like, there are real families that when you actually talk to them, like, this really hasn't even been easy as a parent, and I don't want my kid unattended, not because of the fear, but because they might be goofing off in there, or you want to get to the bathroom and you want to get out, and it's not real easy.
The other thing is that, I had people that worked for me in France for a good while, and the restrooms in France that we normally use, there was a restroom. Period. There were urinals on one side, female urinals on the other side, and a whole bunch of stalls down the middle.
Yeah, sorry, there were female urinals available.
Yeah.
Right. We don't have a lot of that in America.
We don't have any of it I've ever seen. But
you go to Amsterdam and those cities, and men urinate on a pole right at the corner.
Yeah.
Because it's very much just a small little, almost a phone booth size urinal for men on almost every corner, and that took me a long time to get used to.
and it gets them arrested in Houston.
As a gay man, it's like I can't work this. This is not my normal tea room. But yeah, just the idea. So speaking of a guy bringing in his children,
kids,
his daughters, and these daughters were 12 and 13, and there's two guys at the urinals, and there was no dividers between the urinals, so they could see everything. And I'm like, okay, am I comfortable with this?
Right.
But I do agree. Like I said, going back to real estate.
Sure.
And what you said about France, when you're talking about family restrooms, if you create the whole system in one room, there's going to be constantly people there.
Right.
I don't think anything could really happen the way,
Right.
Nobody
Well,
says their kids in anymore unaccompanied.
thankfully
so.
now there are a lot of people, a couple years past the bathroom rhetoric that are saying like, I actually wouldn't mind going to the bathroom with a trans person. I'd rather not go to the bathroom with the politicians who keep driving this. Like there are not real issues, and there are buddies that are like, I'd be more than happy to go in with your kid if you need me to or not. But I mean, not all facilities can change.
Well,
not all policies can be altered,
Well, I'm just, not uncomfortable, but I'm just, I don't know where I want to go with this. That's politically correct. I got three people dead staring at me now.
Well, what I was about to say is one of the other things that a lot of people miss is, let's say that, you have a small child and you need someone to take them into the restroom for you. If you're the person who says, sure, I'll take your kid to the restroom, this is a bunch of liability you just picked up.
Right.
Oh yeah, there is.
Because,
Yeah.
this person may be a little bit touchy about something. And,
Sure.
The kid says, this happened. Whether it happened or not.
Yeah. And
It's almost like you have to have the person taking them in and a witness or something.
Oh yeah.
No, there'd be no way. What I would do if a woman had to take a little boy into the men's room per se or something like that, I'd be able to say, hold up, let me clear the bathroom for you.
Yeah, I have a boy and a girl, niece and nephew from my sister in my family, and it was so easy to take the boy in with the girls up until a certain age. Mm-hmm. But the boy was very introverted, very shy. Like kids are listening to these conversations all the time. They're also scared all the time. And so we were at a restaurant. And my mom, my sister, and my niece go, into the bathroom. And I could just see my nephew going slower and slower and hunching, and I said, I'll go with you. And my mom said, don't you dare. We're in a certain area where this would not be accepted, type of tone. And I'm like, this kid is scared. He just has to pee. And I go in, there's 2 urinals in a stall. I said, do what you got to do. And I kept a foot open on the door. Mm-hmm. I wasn't getting into anyone's privacy. I was just like, I will be here. And my mom was like, don't cause a scene, and it's like, okay, no, you go do what you need to do. And we're keeping an eye on this kid. Like, we need to all grow up to a maturity level and start calling out the facts of what is really just happening in there. Because otherwise, we don't know the history. We're not being taught that in schools. We fall for the rhetoric. We get concerned. We get fearful. But if the community can actually just pull together in the moment for what needs to be done, it's a basic human need.
Do you know the solution it would be if we made public restrooms a public restroom? Mm-hmm. Uno?
Yeah.
Because
it would be very easy.
There would be so many people in that restroom. You couldn't, if you wanted to, approach
That's
somebody.
what I'm saying.
That makes sense.
You're just better off having everybody go to the same restroom. Everybody's safe.
Yep.
A lot of people there got your back.
Yep. Well, a lot of Americans made it segregated because of the policing, right? But you're not wrong. There are conferences that have that, and in the Houston Creating Change conference with the National Task Force had that at the Hilton, and it was a bunch of LGBT people and allies and everything. And you know what they're doing in there? They're talking about the next conference that they're about to walk in. They're talking about how's your wife. They're talking about, hey, did you forget to wash your hands? Do you need extra soap? Because when you're saying if we made it a public restroom, I'm thinking, would it be cleaner? Because
on the men's side will.
Just don't look at the floor.
There you go. So, I think we've exhausted this topic.
Because the gays will keep our side clean.
That hasn't been my experience in numbers.
Right?
I've always, when I worked retail and stuff and had to clean both bathrooms, women's were always nasty.
Well, that too, because of squatting and missing. But
they miss a lot. They miss a lot.
I think the hovers ruin it for a lot of people.
Yes. And
Hovers are genderless.
they always send me in because they're going, you're an EMT, you're used to this crap. I'm like, not hers.
Yes. The cleaner, the better, and the more public access to bathrooms, the better. I mean, I hope that Houston doesn't turn into a place like New York where you can't find public bathrooms. Like, we're getting more density and less access, and that's really hard for people in general.
Well, the
when
nice
they get
thing is,
older.
like, when I go into places and they're like, oh, we don't have a public bathroom. Like, there's a Starbucks right around the corner here. We don't have a public bathroom. Oh, yes, you do. ADA compliant. Mm-hmm. They're going, what? I said, I have a disability. They're going, okay, go ahead, use ours. Walk out. Oh, what was your disability? I'm diabetic.
But
It is a legal
Yeah.
disability.
Yeah.
Because
and not only it affects your
urinary
bladder,
tract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
your kidneys.
Basic human functions. If
Yep.
we were just kinder, the world would be a better
There's
place.
times where when I gotta go, I gotta go. It's like, I'm sorry. It's either that or you're gonna have a very weird frappuccino in about 5 minutes.
Well, thank you for coming today, both of you, and spending time here with us. And we welcome you back. We can talk about other things.
And I have a
at another
question for you
point.
that's
We're
not
gonna
what
talk
you
about
think of it is.
cooking.
Cooking.
Well, that's next.
Oh, okay.
Not right now. No. So what would you like us to push in the podcast to sort of advertise?
Push for advertise.
Advertise? Would you like us to talk about what? I mean, because
We're sponges, so
We can drop-
we're pretty much, you throw the subject matter at us and we have an opinion.
I love it. We can just have you back for different opinions. Yeah, that's great. So
I think we touched on a lot.
A
It was
lot,
Sushi that
yeah.
did the religion, by the way, so everybody knows. That was not me.
we might leave the whole Catholic thing out. Like, I don't know.
we all backed up waiting for the lightning bolts. So.
Next time, what do you want to talk about? The next episode of Falcon and Sushi.
Oh. What can we do to make a change?
Can we do what?
She wants to highlight what can we do to make a change.
Oh,
Is that
that'd
what
be
you're
cool.
saying?
I'm good at that.
Yep. That's the tone of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for me,
Yeah.
it would be, how do we go back and show people our history? Because
Yeah.
I think we touched on a lot of
We did
subject
talk-
here
yeah.
today.
Yeah. No,
about
that's great.
history.
Yeah.
People hate that I bring up history all the time,
Really?
even within the court.
Or me
Oh.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing that I
We
would
love
like to
it.
bring up for this,
Uh-huh.
that if people watch, yes, there's a lot of negative going on out in the world today. But if you watch, there's little messages in commercials, in programs, and all that say, we have your back.
Yep.
And we just need to watch for those messages. You're seeing more and more trans in commercials. You're seeing more and more gay or lesbian couples in commercials. You know, every program has their own queer, so we're still being watched. We have our backing. We have our backs.
I think one of the things I've been telling a lot of my friends, since January, I said, look, I'm 60 years old, turning 60 years old this year. And I can honestly say we have ups, we have downs. We will get through it. We will always get through it because nothing in my life has changed so dramatic that I want to move away. First of all, for anybody who wants to move away, you're just running away from the fight.
And
Okay,
it's a
stick
winner
around.
too.
Yeah, it's like, we don't need you to run away. We need you to fight. So that's one of my biggest issues that I see happening nowadays is that people want to fight online. And
With each other.
With each other. But no, they want to try to create this social fight. And I'm like, no, you got to go back to the old days of Martin Luther King and get the numbers out there and the Million Man March and the march on all these March on Washingtons and the AIDS quilt being thrown all across the mall in Washington, D.C. and say, in your face, Reagan. So we need to go back to getting things in people's faces because what's happening right now And a good example that I like to put out there, and I know some people might get upset with this, but Black Lives Matter. Every time we have a tragedy within the Black community, some riot starts, some protest starts, then it's gone within a week.
Yep. Never stays.
So what politicians are doing now is just wait. It'll disappear.
There's no lasting effect.
There's no lasting effect, and we need to go back to having, for all of us, blacks, browns, Asians, everybody who's been marginalized, Muslims, we always talking about, this group is bad, that group is bad, this group is bad. It's not the groups. It's a small number of people within those groups, and we all have those people within our groups. So it's always a small number of people that make the rest of the group look bad. So don't, what we go see in the next 4 years, and personally, I think in midterms, I think things are going to change because people are realizing the BS that's being thrown down the pipe.
I hope they are.
So
It
I think
looks like people may be starting to wake up.
Oh, even when Marjorie Taylor Greene goes online and says, "We're in deep shit."
Well, and I think that's important because some of the unraveling in the Black Lives Matter movements is, the lasting power to the next election, the lasting power with all the dumpster fires while managing your life. It is specifically hard, so you can have that illustration of, we're all in a choir and we breathe when we need to while we're all singing. And that's cute on a meme, but what it really takes to put in the time and the hours and to stay attuned is hard when everyone is socially still segregated with isolation after the pandemic. It's hard when people feel like voting doesn't matter. When they have these epiphanies and they're not actually showing up at the polls or showing up to volunteer or showing up to do the work. I think some of those messages and get dropped, and then some of the stinking thinking that gets in people's minds is, well, what does it really matter, or does it really matter, or can I make a difference? And so we want to remind people differences have been made, but it takes a long time.
Well, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take numbers of people getting out there and doing it, and it's going to take people being consistent, and it's not going to happen the way trying to send in a letter writing campaign to your congressman. Well, guess what? When I get my mail every day, I know it's junk mail. So,
most of it goes in the trash.
Everything comes through email that I need as far as my bill. So I don't look at my mail coming through.
But here's the big thing. I think we have to do it smarter. We do what I consider stupid things constantly.
What would smarter look like at this point?
Smarter would look like figure out where some pressure points are, figure out how you can move that forward. With the Texas legislature, which is currently, not a great group of people, but they aren't too bad. We have a group of people that represent us here in Houston who are okay. And we have some really excellent people. And we being TFA in this case, went to great extents to court those people, make sure they understood our position. We support them in a whole lot of ways that people have no clue, because we need them to do things like add things into laws that make them not bad for us,
right,
or not as bad for us. And they do that. And we've gotten a lot of that done. For instance, this year in the legislature, I think there were like 180 anti-trans bills that were introduced, and doesn't look like any of them are going to pass. Now, Abbott may call a special session just to take them all on. Who knows? But it's a type thing that we also have to educate the populace, because when something, the news media says, "Oh, well, this bill was introduced to make it illegal to be transgender." It was introduced, by the way. That's so far from being a law that it's ridiculous. I mean, it's right. Probably, unless the governor is pushing it, it's going to take 3 years before it even gets a hearing anyplace.
Right.
And so the idea is that our people go in and start working on it. So, instead of making a huge deal and essentially causing them problems with the rest of the voters in their district, what we try to do is make sure that we have enough voters that are going to vote for them to keep them in, and that we support them heavily. And I think that's the big thing. was doing activism type stuff before the Million Man March came up and before the first Civil Rights March and all like that. And I was like, oh, this will fix something. It fixed nothing. It made no difference. Right. It was at all positive. All it did was cause a lot of litter in Washington, D.C.
You know,
I'm okay with that.
It's kind of sad, but it's also kind of true. I remember when we made that march on Austin.
Yeah.
30, 40 years ago. However long
I was going to say, it doesn't matter when. There have been a bunch.
My mom said, if y'all took all that money you spent to do that march and donated it, could you imagine?
Well, I got a better one for you. You take all that stuff, you throw it into a pack so that you can do what you want with it, and you go target the people that are doing the negative bills.
Yeah.
Like I would love to be able to target the person who introduced the bill that said it's a felony to be transgender. And that's what it says. I mean, there's no question about it. I would love to say, okay, you're elected every 2 years. Guess what? Hi, it's us.
Yeah.
And that person, we're going to support really heavily.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk to everybody in your community that we can possibly talk to about how horrible you are, how great they are. And usually you find that trans people like when they meet them.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get this hate thing or anything else. You get, generally, they like you.
Well, the amazing part is how many people, like Chris said earlier, how many people are standing right beside you that you don't even realize are trans.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they have assimilated in.
Or
as far
have
as
someone in their family or actually cares but is afraid to say it because they don't want to lose a friend or they don't want to, they're not the ally that can pick a fight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you are shutting out your friends without even knowing it.
Yeah.
And some of it is avoiding the conversation and being on the public bandwagon. And, one of the things that we were looking at with some of the trans rhetoric is who's actually suing the Heritage Foundation? Who is actually going for the people that are causing all this hate policy?
And basically, they've made statements that are defamation of character toward me, toward other people. The people that put up the billboards here in Houston that said all trans are pedophiles, which they did put those up. Why didn't we sue them? Now, that goes to me too.
Right.
But it's like, I'm sorry, what we have to do is start to make it hurt.
Right.
Well,
And there was a time a while back when I was an assistant secretary of commerce and was doing stuff with the first Bush administration, I guess it was, and was asked to lobby Congress on some stuff they were doing. Well, when you're lobbying Congress, there's a way you can ask for 5 minutes for personal stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I did that and, discuss the whole trans situation and all that type thing. And most of the congressmen are happy to give you 5 minutes if you've been in there on behalf of the White House. And it was interesting because there was something coming up. I don't even remember what it is now, but there was a law coming up. And the big push was they wanted to eliminate the trans people and give everybody else equality, which they did. And, everybody was all happy about the law. And during this whole thing, I ran across a bunch of people that said, well, I'm not going to out myself, but I will never vote against something that's a trans issue if I know that's what it is, and I will always vote in favor of it, but I'm not going to out myself. Mm-hmm. Now, there were a bunch of people. Well, it turns out this particular law, which was really good for the gay community, was really good for everybody except the trans community, and a lot of gay people were saying, well, we'll come back and pick you up later. We've had that a bunch of times.
The whole political expedience.
Yeah, the HRC was pushing for it. And so I made the phone calls to these people that weren't going to out themselves, and I'm like, I need you to vote against it because we need to kill this law. And they did. And everyone's like, it's so horrible. I'm like, no, you kept us out. You would have had the law if you'd put us in. Mm-hmm. I can tell you who voted for it and who didn't, and you would have had 14 more votes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, we only needed 6. I'm like, exactly. So don't underestimate us, And it's that sort of thing that I think we need to do more of, where it hurts, where it really hurts them. Right. And HRC started being a little bit nicer.
And also what I hear in that story is where we need to repair our history going forward is we don't abandon people different parts in our community. You know, I mean, we need to hold all the community accountable for what they call political expedience. And they say, well, we need these rights, so we're dumping you.
Yeah.
You know, that needs to stop because we do need to stay together. Ultimately, they will come for all of us. And we have had a history of the dumping and having trans people, especially with the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance, you know, taking the punch. That ordinance would have supported vets, would have supported pregnant women, would have supported race. 56% of the calls to the city that were reported for people not, you know, following law and policy that you would need an equal rights ordinance for was not for gays, was not for lesbians, was not for trans people. There's not enough of those people in our city. It was for race, but they couldn't run a hate campaign against that because then they never get voted in.
Right.
So, you know, we do need to stick together.
And when it came up again, our position was we got beat up really bad last time, and you all just sort of threw us, you know, under the bed or under the truck or bus or whatever it was, but you weren't there to help at all. We had to basically take care of our people, and everybody else is like, not us.
And
How
as
long
it
ago was
turned,
that?
it was in 2015, I think it was right when gay marriage was made legal, like in around October, and then it was on the ballot. The bathroom bill was on the ballot that following November, and our city council.
And see, the problem is, we even say it's a bathroom bill. There's no word about bathrooms.
Right, there's no word about it, but that's how people would remember. The Houston Equal Rights Ordinance ended up being the bathroom rhetoric bill, and it protected a lot of public accommodations, and our gay mayor thought it would pass on the ballot. A lot of the people on the council thought it would pass on the ballot.
And the council adopted it, and then there was a ballot initiative to recall it.
And if people had been paying attention in our community and out of our community and not fell for the rhetoric, they could have gotten gay married and then went to work and put their wedding pictures on their desk and not been fired for it. But there's no recourse if you do that. And they didn't know that you have to follow it all the way through.
There is. I think the EEOC has a recourse against discrimination. Against...
Nope. They didn't. EEOC's recourse is that you can't be fired
for being gay.
But you can be fired for displaying that you're gay. That was the ridiculous thing that I found in the Obama administration. They didn't change that. See, the other thing about it is it really disturbs me. You know, we've had a couple of administrations that are supposedly very friendly to us. They didn't pass a single law on our behalf. What they did were executive orders. Those are worthless.
Right.
That's a 4-year thing, and then it's gone.
At the federal level.
Yeah, at the federal level. Now, you know, why didn't they do the laws? Because they had other things they wanted to do. And so it's like I don't give them a whole lot of credit because these can all be reversed and have been now. And that's what's sort of getting us. So that's why I say we've got to be a little bit smarter and a little bit pushier about what we're doing. Right. But I think, you know, we're in better shape than we were. I mean, I look at it sort of the macro view, and it's like, let me go back 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Are we in better shape? Yeah.
Yes.
Now, are we in good shape? Not necessarily. Is it where we were?
That goes back to my civil rights argument. You know, you talk about, you know, African Americans having their rights for the last 60 years, supposedly, but yet they're still being underpaid. There's political redlining still going on. To where they're forced into certain communities.
Yeah, the Democratic Party, you know, had this convention in Milwaukee, I think it was. And it's a totally red line city. And I'm like, why are you taking your money to Milwaukee? Yep. Well, it's because your party chair, assistant chair, family ran all of the concessions there. And I'm like, so don't give me the bit of, guys, the Democrats are perfect, because they aren't.
But what I'm getting back to is that 60 years later, they still have issues.
Yeah.
So,
but see, one of the things I think we do wrong, and I don't think I've said this terribly loudly publicly, we do it backwards.
We do go backwards. And
No. You missed what I said. We do it backwards. If we're talking civil rights, you know, we go in and we say you can't discriminate because of this or this or this or this or this. Why do we do that? My view is you can't discriminate because of anything except, and name the reasons. You know, for instance, with real estate, you can discriminate if they don't have the money.
Right.
But everything else, sorry, you can't. for anybody.
I think that's really important because, when all of this rhetoric was coming about, I had a friend that is white, cis, heteronormative, followed all the ally work and all this other stuff. And he's like, you know who I am. You know my heart. Can I ask you a question? And I said, absolutely. He says, well, who do I get to discriminate against? And I really had no idea what to say because I've never considered discriminating against other people. But there are people who want to do that. So if that's the case, then discriminate against hate, discriminate against injustice, discriminate, flip it around in your head. I don't wake up in the morning asking myself that, so I'm not sure.
That's what I said to a friend of mine the other day. He posted on Facebook that he's going to remove anybody who is participating in the cancel culture. I said, so you're canceling the cancel culture? I said, that doesn't make sense. So.
And that's what happens, you start
you just became one of them.
Yeah. So if we were just, who do we get to discriminate against? Real estate injustice, or what's the exceptions if we were to take on your approach, Alexis?
Well, even in real estate, you can't.
There are reasons. We discriminate all the time. If the water is too hot, you don't jump in it. That's a discrimination.
Okay.
If there's some reason, then you don't do it. But the key is, it needs to be a real reason, not this made up thing.
Yeah.
And like with real estate, one of the things is if you say we're going to take a law and you need to list all the reasons you might want to decide not to sell to this person or a realtor not to serve this person. They will give you a list, and then you filter their list, and it ends up being a much shorter list than we currently have. Mm-hmm. And because there are, if the person can't, get a loan and they don't have the money and they don't have okay, sure. Then you don't sell them a house.
Well, that's the approval process. That's not discrimination.
Well, but a lot of the approval process is discrimination. With trans especially, it's they're trans people.
What do you define that? As far as...
Okay, so right after Hero, one of the things that happened was a bunch of trans people lost their housing because they were trans, and they were out because of Hero. And so we had to take care of them. Still, the people find that when they go in to certain places, not every place, if they're trans, suddenly there's all sorts of other requirements, there's all sorts of problems, and, whether they have the money or not.
Well, because public accommodations beyond the bathrooms also includes housing.
Well, no, right? Actually they don't.
No, okay.
One of the problems that we have, essentially the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance was worthless until we got a state or federal law, because it just didn't have anything close to the teeth it would have to have. Companies would just build in the $200 maximum fine as a cost of doing business, which was a real problem. But from the state standpoint, there's several things that you can probably get through. But one of the things is there's no place in the state of Texas laws that define public accommodations. And that's the complicated one. And, the strong suggestion from the Republican side when I was talking to them was that we find a law that's, nobody cares about, that we put the definition of public accommodations in. So that doesn't end up being the main thrust of the argument over whether or not we allow people to discriminate based, for public accommodations. And that it's being done in...
So you are talking about more, not about getting a loan, more about public housing.
Housing, you can't buy a house because of this lot. It's a deed restriction type thing or something.
So they can put that in your deeds?
I've never heard of it, but...
I've never seen it in the deeds, but they've done it with everything else like that.
25 years, so I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
And we just care about the money. Can you pay the loan? Sure. Okay, here's your loan.
But see, that makes
it... Well, she worked with me too, so...
But see, that makes it really simple, and that's what I'm saying. That's what we ought to be doing, instead of trying to go through and say, well, you can't discriminate because they're gay or because they're this or because... It's like, sorry, there's no discrimination except...
The only thing that we really had issues with, and I'll be quite honest with it, is how you hold title. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of it has to do with... Are you a married man? Are you a single woman? So if you are trying to do a gender that's different from your driver's license, that's where you're going to run into problems, because they're going to put in the title work what your gender is on your driver's license, because that's all we can go by. Even though how you self-identify is completely different. So that's the only issue, because I was the operations manager, and trust me, I've never we do, my husband and I are on the same title work together as husbands.
Well, I'll guarantee you that in Dallas, they did that when I was living in Dallas.
Probably a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it was before the 70s.
Yeah. Laws have changed since then.
And it's sort of like, guess what? We're headed back that way.
Yeah,
But-
the whole Dodd-Frank laws that came through, the whole TRID process where there's now a lot of laws that prevent discrimination within the lending process.
Yeah, but-
now public housing, I don't know.
Yeah, those are federal, though, in general.
The
laws.
loans we do in housing lending, it could be depends on who you
Because
sell
I was going
to.
to say the
If it's
banking laws are
our
federal.
government loans are only VA and FHA loans.
Okay, yeah, so those are
So
federal.
everything else conventional or non-portfolio loans, which is held by the bank,
Mm-hmm.
they can invest it. But trust me, it's all about the money. They don't care about title work.
Well, and I personally like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I like about the oil companies. They don't discriminate as much as other people, except
not at all.
Except Exxon, because their thing is, do you make me money? Okay,
Yeah.
I don't care about anything else.
Right.
You don't even have to be nice. You don't make me money? I still don't care about anything
And
else.
you know what? I wish that's how everybody would be.
Yeah.
If the Republicans only care about greed, gays know how to make money because we don't have kids as much, and we don't. We know how to party. We know how to do trips. We know. Trust me, we can make you money.
You know what? And I've said this for years, and I wished we could do it. If we all just walked off our jobs for one day.
Oh yeah.
Just
Blue
for
flu.
one day. This whole country would go,
There's that many of them?
When you look
I mean,
at
the hospitals would shut down.
Yes.
The airports would shut down. The hotels would shut down. The restaurants would shut down. Everything would shut down.
beauty powders.
Yep.
But everything would just completely cut to a halt.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would come to a halt, but it would be very, very difficult. I'll tell you that
Well,
much.
and the problem is we aren't organized enough to do that.
Oh, that's true.
I mean,
but
we're the most unorganized
that
group
could
of...
be, but that could also be, that's not true though.
Yeah,
I could bring something in the past.
Go ahead.
She knows people. No, just kidding.
But, I think it would make a whole lot bigger impact than what you think it would.
And what would be the intent in that for you? Like, okay,
For
so
them to go, oh, maybe we shouldn't fuck with them.
Here's the thing: if the Republicans would just accept the gays, they would not have any issues getting reelected. Their whole platform of pushing us away is the reason why, because it's us, our family members that support us, a lot of them, people who are gay friendly, they are sick of the bullshit of hearing hate, hate, hate. And that's only their sound bites nowadays, is hate, hate, hate. And every time, we talk about different things, they create drama sometimes just to divert.
oh, for sure.
So that's why I say, it's like, I don't know how much of a, I would hope that it would cause a big distraction and upset, especially if it was not just us, if it was our supporters too.
Well,
That would make the disruption.
but the other thing is, if all the media, LGBTQ people, walked off for a day, it would cause a disruption.
Oh, just to hear makeup people. Oh, yes.
Well, I mean, the whole country, you don't really realize on how important we are
We are.
to this world. And it would be,
So,
but you made that comment earlier about us not being organized. We were once
maybe.
when Whitmire was running. And
Not the current Whitmire mayor.
no.
I mean, the sister-in-law.
Kathy.
But when the Straight Slate put
Yeah,
up that magazine,
right.
put posters up all over AIDS God's answer to homosexuality. I mean, it was intense, and it was the first and only time that we put out that vote block. And everybody on that vote block won. And then we started breaking up our power.
That's the whole purpose behind what they're doing, though, is divide and conquer. They keep creating drama within every aspect. Not just, like I said, it's every people that are feeling marginalized, black, Hispanic, whatever it is, Asians, us, Muslims, they are creating diversion and causing problems within ourselves.
I was going to say, and they're pointing it toward the other groups that they're trying to attack,
Right. There's always going to be a finger being pointed at somebody else instead of at themselves.
Yeah.
And that's the whole the whole fear-based mongering that they're doing to get elected, and the whole hate behind it is what they're winning on. It's about creating fear, and they're putting the fear in the stupid people, and the stupid people are what's voting.
What's running this country? And, it's it all goes back to us that we got to become more united.
It goes back to what I said. Mind your own damn business. Stay in your lane.
Well, but the biggest thing is, I think we have to start being smarter in how we respond to things. And, these people all theoretically work for us.
Theoretically.
It's heavy on the theory, but we need to start calling them out on that.
Mm-hmm.
And
but, it's kind of like that one person that looks at a cop and goes, I pay your salary.
That's different.
No, you don't.
That's different.
But
but if I say I want to talk to a Republican congressperson and he's not my district or anything else, I should be able to talk to him, and usually I can. It takes a little while to work it out, but and I'm not interested in talking to the Democrats nearly as much as the Republicans, because the Democrats I see all the time.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you being here, to say the least. There's no blood on the floor. I think it all went well then.
Not this time.
All right, take care.
No, it's not a
you.
bye
Thank
yet. It's not a bye yet. I'm sorry. And anybody that's listening to this, we really appreciate you supporting the podcast. And go to our support link. And if you would like to, we'd be happy to have you as a supporter. You can cancel at any time if you decide you don't like us after this. But, it's one of those things. And if you want to send us comments, we have a comment that says talk back, and we will read them and answer you.
Sends us directly to us, and we're looking forward to
and then it comes in as sort of a, no, it doesn't go anywhere else chat type stuff. So now, bye.
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 Bye.